Hey guys, Anime Fanfics here. This is chapters 22-26 of the Namikaze Prodigy by Soul Reaper Crew. Links to all stories are in the description below, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 22. Student vs. Teacher. Do you both have everything you need for this morning? Naruto asked Mito and Eiji as he enjoyed his breakfast round at his parents' house. It was not often that he ate breakfast at his parents' house anymore, despite Kushina always telling him to be over every day. The twins looked ready to burst into hysterics as both nodded eagerly, Mito especially, and could barely contain her excitement. Next to him, Mina ate her toast as she listened to her older brother and sister talk about all the cool things they were going to now that they were shinobi, while Naruto just laughed at how the twins thought they were going to go out saving princesses. They are going to be heartbroken, Naruto thought, since all genin had to submit to the torturous D ranks. It was like a coming-of-age requirement, especially that Hellcat Tora. Naruto got shudders at the thought of that cat. Are you sure you both have everything? It would not be wise to leave anything behind, especially on team assignment day, Kushina prodded, repeating Naruto's question as she fought back a smirk. Only a few people were aware that Kushina was taking another team, and Naruto wondered how Mito would take it. Since they were similar in fighting styles, Mito would thrive under their mother's tutelage, since now that she was a genin, she could really learn the good stuff now. We have everything, Kachan, the twins both said in unison. Thought it sounded like they were more annoyed since Kushina had asked them 3 times already. I'm just making sure it sinks in. I want my babies to be prepared for what's to come, she said as stood behind the twins and kissed the tops of their heads, making them both pout. We are not babies anymore, Kachan, they said in unison again, making Kushina laugh and Naruto and Mina smile. You are always going to be my babies no matter how old you get, she said, stroking the tops of their heads, making their pouts disappear as soft smiles now graced their faces. It's almost 11. You two better get going. Remember, be nice to your teammates, do not complain who you are with, and do not disobey your sensei's orders, understand? Naruto told them as both nodded and quickly hopped out of their chairs. Both wore their uniforms from their day sparring with Naruto and had their gifts from him strapped to their bodies, while they had their headbands wore proudly on their foreheads. Get going, munchkins, he said as they both hugged him from his seat before going over to Mina, who gave them both sloppy good luck kisses. Then after their hug with Kushina, who held them both in a hug for nearly half a minute, they both went towards the front door and left the house. They grow up way too fast, Kushina muttered, since 3 of her 4 babies were now shinobi. She turned to look at her youngest. Don't grow up too quickly, Mina-chan, she asked as Mina giggled and kissed her mother's nose. Okay, Kachan, Mina said, making Kushina laugh, and began to gush over her youngest before she sent her upstairs to wash. Leaving just her and Naruto in the room, she began making her own breakfast since she didn't need to be at the Hokage's office until 11:30, giving her a bit of time with her eldest. She sat down just off to the side of him and watched as he finished his breakfast and pulled out a little pocketbook from his pocket. He pulled out a brush and began writing and drawing in it. Kushina bit into her toasts and leaned over. What are you doing, sweetie? You look like you're concentrating hard, she said, trying to look at the page. Naruto chuckled. It's a little sealing book. It just has stuff on sealing and ideas of potential sealing jutsu I come up with. I'm currently working on one at the moment, and hopefully it will prove to be a success. He now had his mother full attention. Anything to do with Fuinjutsu, then her attention was yours. What's the idea? Let me see, she said, trying to look at the page, though Naruto kept moving it out of the way. Kushina pouted and started climbing over her son to try and get to the book. Just to annoy her some more, Naruto stood up and put the book above his head. Since his mother was not very tall, she immediately growled in annoyance before she took a few steps back and used the chair to vault herself. She slammed into Naruto and as she went down grabbed the book. Ich, she said in triumph, and quickly began looking at what he was currently working on, while Naruto pouted besides her. No fair, Kachan, he said, while Kushina stuck her tongue out at him. As he sat back up, Kushina's eyes began gliding over the page. It was piquing her interest more and more since she saw that the current seal design had traits of a trap seal along with an attack, defense, and sensing seal incorporated into it. She tried to figure out what it was, but she was coming up blank. What is this exactly? She asked since she was very curious over it. Naruto, who finally sat up, scratched the back of his head. Well, I know that for a kunoichi one of the worst traumas is rape while out on a mission. So lately, I have been trying to develop an anti-rape seal, he said as Kushina looked at him in surprise. Rape was the fear of every kunoichi all over the world. Having it taken from them by force stayed with them for life, and Kushina knew many past kunoichi that unfortunately had that unfortunate experience. It caused some to quit while others took their lives from the shame of it. It works like this, he said as he took the book from Kushina. The seal has chakra poured into it and is then marked over the woman's virginal area. If an enemy shinobi try to enter her forcefully, then the seal will pick it up. With the sensing seal incorporated into it, it can sense whether they have good or bad intentions. If they have bad intentions, then the attack and defense seal part of it will activate. The defense will create a thin layer of chakra to protect her womanhood, while the attack seal sends out a sharp pulse of chakra which should in theory dismember him of his manhood, Naruto said as Kushina looked at her soon in amazement. Her looks went from Naruto to the seal, then back to Naruto. This seal could be revolutionary for kunoichi everywhere. This could change everything for us, she thought. How did no one think of this before? The concept is so simple, and with the right skills in Fuinjutsu it could be very possible. She had to tell Minato about this later since he would be feeling the exact same thing towards him. What do you think? He asked as Kushina gave him a proud look. Naruto, this is incredible. You could potentially have a seal that protects women everywhere. This seal is simply incredible, and it shows how far you have progressed in Fuinjutsu. What level are you at, because this work is as good as it gets? Naruto blushed a little at the compliment but answered her question. I'm halfway through level 8, he said, and once again Kushina was gobsmacked. Level 8? I only reached level 8 by the time I was 20. At this rate he is going to surpass both Minato and I when it comes to Fuinjutsu, she thought as the proud look on her face just grew even more. What else do you have in here? I would like to hear some more of your ideas, Kushina said as Naruto smiled at her and huddled closer as they went through the book. Hour later. Naruto walked down the path and wore his shinobi gear as he walked towards the Chunin exam arena. He had gotten a letter from Hiruzen just after he left his parents' home telling him to come to the Chunin Stadium at this time and to not be late. His interest peaked and Naruto was curious to what his Gigi wanted. He spent a good 20 minutes with his mother talking about Fuinjutsu, and he could see she was deeply impressed with his work and his ideas. She gave him some advice with a few of them and told him a few variant seals that would work better to create other seals, something he listened to closely. When it came to seals, his mother surpassed even his father in that regard. She was a true Uzumaki when it came to Fuinjutsu, with the only person who could surpass her was Mito Uzumaki, the Shodaime wife. She told him that if he ever needed help, then he was always welcome to ask her for either help or to run ideas by her. Coming up with new Fuinjutsu was like porn for an Uzumaki. She is probably at the Hokage office right now getting ready to welcome her new team, Naruto thought, since Kushina looked quite excited at the prospect of having a second team. Though internally she was doing it to gloat that she had more teams than Makoto. Their rivalry was never going to end. Approaching the Chunin Stadium, Naruto went on inside through the open doors, which he guessed were left open just for him, and began walking up the stairs towards the setting area. Once he entered, he saw the giant field in the center of the stadium. It looked just like the training grounds and had a rocky terrain with trees, grass and a pool of water in it, making it an ideal training location. Though he stopped in his spot and could not help but let a grin appear on his face when he looked down at the center of the field. Standing dead center in the field was the Sandaime Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi, decked out in his full battle gear with a concentrated look on his face. Despite his age, the man was intimidating as ever, and Naruto could feel the power that radiated for him. He jumped from the stadium and landed a few meters in front of Hiruzen. Open just for him, and began walking up the stairs towards the setting area. I take it you want that spar we promised one another now? Naruto said as it was now Hiruzen's turn to smirk. It is. I want to see just how far you have come in these 3 years, Naruto. I have been eagerly waiting for the moment to take you on one-on-one like this, and I don't plan on taking it easy on you like I did when you were younger." Naruto's grin stayed on his face as he took off his jacket and threw it to the side, revealing his muscled and powerful arms. "Gigi, I would not have it any other way," he said as Naruto and Hiruzen began doing a few stretches. "Are both warriors ready?" a loud voice called out as Naruto looked over to see Tsunade standing in the Kage box with a grin on her face. She had wanted to see this match for a long time as well and hoped she would get her turn against her student in due time as well. Naruto gave her a nod and thumbs up, which Hiruzen gave her as well. "In that case, get ready," she said as Naruto and Hiruzen both got in their taijutsu stances and both now had a focused look on their faces as they examined each other's stances. From up top on the stands, two Chunin Izumo and Kotetsu, who were currently off duty, saw the doors to the stadium open and went to check it out. They saw Sandame Hokage and the son of the Yandame about to square off with the slug Sannin, being the proctor of the match. They both had one thing in their minds. "We need to tell everyone," they said before making a few clones each and began spreading the word of this to the entire village. "I think we are going to have company," Naruto said as he quickly took a few kunais with barrier tags stuck to the bottom and set them around the arena. A thick blue barrier erected around the field to try and keep damage and attacks contained as best as they could. Once up, Naruto turned back to look at Hiruzen. After a few calm and silent moments, Tsunade's voice sounded out. "Begin!" Both Hiruzen and Naruto shot off from their spots at extreme speed and slammed their fists against one another, making a strong shockwave suddenly hit the area as the teacher and student began to battle. Academy. Mito Uzumaki Namikaze sat proudly as she sat beside her best friend Ino Yamanaka and had her blade from Naruto resting in her lap. The two chatted about trivial things and listened as Ino began saying who she would like to be with team-wise and hoping they were not complete bakas. But she noticed her friend kept glancing over towards her brother. It was no secret, at least to Mito anyway, that Ino had big crush on her twin Eiji, who was unfortunately as dense as their father when it came to seeing that a girl liked him. She looked around the room to see her other peer members. Shikamaru Nara was sleeping and Shoji Akimichi, who was eating chips, were beside one another as usual, since it was rare to see one without the other. Just in front of them was her brother, who sat with Kiba Inuzuka, and his puppy Akamaru, who rested on top of his head. Shino Aburame, the ever-quiet member of class, sat at the back with the shy Hinata Hyuga beside him. Then at front of them was Yakumo Kurama, who was a nice girl, but she did not know her much, and a pale boy she did not recognize. Then glancing at the table in front of her twins was where Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno sat, with said girl trying to get the Uchiha's attention. Sakura Haruno was Sasuke Uchiha's #1 fangirl, and she got on Mito's nerves. They used to be friends before Sakura went all fangirl. She really did wonder how on earth she managed to pass. Then there was Sasuke Uchiha. The boy was always broody and constantly miserable in Mito's eyes and caused her friendship with him from when they were younger to deteriorate completely. Now he enjoyed letting people know he was stronger than they were and that everyone should bow down to him due to being from the Uchiha clan. He was nothing like Itachi, who Mito liked since she had known him ever since she was little and was always nice to her. But she stayed away from Sasuke since the look he gave her sometimes freaked her out. It was like he was going to walk over to her and drag her away with him and have his way with her. While she could hold her own perfectly, the way he looked at her made her feel uneasy. As she shook her head, Iruka walked in and everyone's attention focused on him. They listened in boredom for a good 20 minutes until eventually Iruka got to the part they had all been waiting for. "Now for the teams," he announced as everyone suddenly sat up straighter as Iruka began calling out everyone's names. After a few minutes of announcing the first 6 teams, he got to the main group. Team 7 will be Eiji Namikaze, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Jonin sensei is Kakashi Hatake, he called as Sakura whooped loudly at being on her crush's team while Sasuke just grunted. Eiji meanwhile groaned at the thought of being with the emo and the fangirl. Kiba patted him on the back. Well, at least it's with Kakashi, Eiji thought, since he guessed that was not so bad. Though he and Mito were surprised they were not together, but he guessed he could deal with it. Team 8 will be Shino Aburame, Yakumo Kurama, and Hinata Hyuga. Your Jonin sensei is Kurenai Yuhi. Said 3 genin looked at one another and nodded, being happy with the outcome. Team Ten will be ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimisi and Kiba Inuzuka. Your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Ino quickly cried out in horror since she was stuck in her mind with the fatty and the kid with fleas. Choji didn't mind and gave a thumbs up to Kiba, who happily gave one back.
Team mineistil operational, he sait before getting to his last team. He final teamisteam 11 consisting of mitto namikase, sikamaru nara antsai. Your Jonin sensei is kusina usumakki.
Both Mito and Eiji had their jaws drop. Waikachan Mito / my sensei, the twins thought, both clearly surprised, as was the rest of the class. They all knew Twins' mother was one of the best in the village that was on par with the Sannin. Sasuke seethed a little, both at not getting such a powerful teacher and not being on Mito's team. Mito meanwhile looked around the room at her two teammates. Shikamaru I can work with, though the lazy ass is going to need a push every 5 minutes, she thought, since she knew how lazy Inara could be. But she was a little stumped at the pale kid with the eerie smile on his face. As they chatted amongst one another, they all saw another Chunin come into the room and whisper into Irika's ear. Everyone's attention was on them since they saw Irika's look of disbelief on his face. Right now in the Chunin Stadium? Irika asked as the Chunin nodded vigorously. Irika-sensei, what's happening in the Chunin Stadium? Ino asked as everyone's attention was peaking. Irika turned to them looking a little conflicted, but the Chunin beside him tapped him on the shoulder. Come on Irika, when are they going to see a battle like this again? It might do them some good to see it, he said before he left the room. Irika saw the eager faces on their faces and spoke up. I just got word that the Sandaime Hokage is in a sparring battle in the Chunin Stadium with the Hokage's eldest child, and it seems to be getting quite heavy. Many of the shinobi are going to watch. Since you're all genin now, maybe it would be good for you all to see this battle, Irika said, and saw Mito and Eiji look at him in disbelief before they got excited looks on their faces and jumped out of their seats and ran out the room. Quickly everyone else ran out of the room after the twins. Hokage's office. Unknown to the genin, the Hokage and many of the jonins had been watching their reactions to the team assignments. Kushina got a little annoyed that only Mito was given to her, but after hearing the reasoning she understood, while the other jonins were happy with their charges. But they also heard Irika's announcement and look out the window to see many shinobi and civilian heading towards the stadium. The Sandaime was taking on the Hokage's eldest. Kushina and Minato looked a little gobsmacked while Asuma whistled, clearly none of them saw it coming. The Sandaime was taking on the Hokage's eldest. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I want to see this. I want to see how strong little Naruto has become, Kurenai said, since she always had a soft spot for the blonde and was the first to leave, quickly followed by Asuma and all the other jonin. Kushina and Minato took a moment to process what they heard before Minato flashed them both out of the room and towards the Chunin Stadium. Chunin Stadium. Katan, Goryoka no Jutsu. Suiton, Heidoro Panpu. A huge blast of fire and water shot out of the mouths of Naruto and Hiruzen and collided into one another as the A-rank techniques fought for dominance over one another and steam began to pour into the air. The stadium got very warm all of a sudden from the attack. From the steam, Hiruzen jumped forward with his adamantine staff in hand, having summoned it moments earlier, and twirled it around in his hands. Naruto watched the staff come down and dress Shigure from its sheath and stop the powerful weapon where it was, though he felt the attack in full force as his shoulder buckled a little. Naruto tried a leg sweep, but Hiruzen saw it coming and quickly dodged the attack. Seeing Hiruzen in midair, Naruto quickly made more hand signs. Futon Detapa, he shouted and blasted a strong burst of wind at Hiruzen, which slammed into the old Hokage and slammed him into the ground. However, the previous Hokage burst into smoke. A clone Naruto thought, as did many others, as Naruto began looking around. He not to my right, left, front or behind. No way would he try the air after that attack, which leaves one place. Chakra swirled around Naruto's right fist before he slammed his fist to the ground, causing a shock wave to hit the ground and making the earth all around him to explode upwards, as well as causing cracks to form along the walls and barrier. From the left of him, Hiruzen was forced out of the ground from the attack, but again he disappeared in smoke. Naruto was about to look right before a strong impact from the adamantine staff slammed into his head and threw him across the field and through a tree. Naruto shook his head as he felt his brain rattle from that one and saw Hiruzen standing where he was previously standing. "You hinged into a piece of rubble," he said as Hiruzen nodded, making Naruto chuckle. "After 3 years you're still taking me to school." Hiruzen smiled and they both saw the stadium fill up with shinobi and citizens. Naruto saw the twins with their classmates, with the twins having stars in their eyes at watching their brother battle. Up in the Kage box he saw his parents with Kakashi, the elders, and some of the clan heads. "Since we have an audience, let's take this up a notch," he said as Hiruzen nodded eagerly as Naruto lifted his sleeves up to reveal weight seals around his wrists and on his ankles. "Kai," he said as they broke and immediately felt a lot lighter and cracked his neck. "Let's go Gigi," he said as both Naruto and Hiruzen leaned back before they sped toward each other's speeds that only the strongest Jonin, clan heads and Kage-level shinobi could follow. They watched as loud slams and felt shock waves hit the arena as they tried to follow Naruto and Hiruzen's movements. After a minute they saw Naruto and Hiruzen appeared on top of tone of the wall by the edge of one of the barriers and watched as Naruto slammed right fist into Hiruzen's faces and Hiruzen slammed his left fist into Naruto's. They stepped back and then both did a high kick that connected with one another and caused the one beneath them to completely collapse. For the next 10 minutes everyone leaned forward in awe as they watched the Sandaime Hokage and the eldest of the Yondaime duke it out with one another as they threw fist after fist, swing after swing and jutsu after jutsu at one another. His parents were barely able to comprehend what was happening. They knew he must have gotten stronger, but to such a degree was just incredible. Tsunade grinned meanwhile, knowing she helped create this fine shinobi in front of her. In the stands the genin were all in awe, as was the chunin and many of the jonin and all the civilians. Mito and Eiji could stay in their seat since watching their big brother fight such a powerful shinobi was the most awesome sight they had ever seen. "Naruchan is incredible," Kushina whispered in awe as Makoto stood next to her in a similar state. Minato was lost for words, as was Tsunade, before Minato put his hand in pocket and pulled out a bingo book and began looking for Naruto's page. When he did, his eyes almost rolled out of their sockets. He handed it over to Kushina, who had Tsunade and Makoto look over her shoulders. They read the page in front of them and looked ready to faint completely. Name: Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Age: 18. Gender: male. Origin: Kanahagakure. Shinobi rank: Jonin. Caliber rank: S. Known alias: Konoha no Tsubasa Akuma, Konoha's Blade Devil. Known clan affiliation: Uzumaki clan. Known element affinities: Futon, Dotun, Suetun. Skill list: Taijutsu 4.5, Ninjutsu 4.5, Genjutsu 1, Intelligence 4.5, Strength 4.5, Speed 5, Stamina 5, Hand seals 4. Weapons: katana made of black metal with a purple guard and black sheath. Katana with a flower-shaped guard with a white and green sheath. Physical description: stands at 6 feet 3 inches and weighs 205 pounds. Golden blonde hair and violet eyes. Tan skin and is known to wear traditional leaf shinobi attire with a red scarf and red cloak with black flames. Special abilities: known to have chakra sensor-like abilities. Despite age, he has enough chakra for 2 Kages. Known family: Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage, Kiroi Senku, Kushina Uzumaki, Benihime. Other information: is known to have defeated and killed 7 swordsman members Raiga Kurisuki and Kushimaru Kuriere, as well as Chukichi of Kiri and Gari of Explosion Release. Bounty: 65 million Ryo dead or alive stationed by IWA. 65 million Ryo alive stationed by Oto. 60 million Ryo dead or alive stationed by Kiri. Not only was Kushina, Tsunade, and Makoto reading it, but many of the clan heads and the elders were reading the bingo books. They kept on them and began to realize just how much potential and how powerful this young man really was. He could be a real benefit to this village, Inoichi stated as Shikaku Nara and Choza Akimichi all nodded in agreement. His strength is indeed impressive. He would make a fine tool for this village, Hamura said, but did not see the glare from Kushina for the tool reference. As they fought in the air, both landed a strong kick to one another, making them both fall towards the ground. How strong is this Gaki Hiruzen? Enma complained to his summoner, though Hiruzen did not answer. He was enjoying the battle too much. Naruto barely touched the ground before he pushed himself back into the air, and with his hand on Shigeru and his other hand on his wrist he swung down. Hiryu, Kane, he called as he slashed down with so much force that a powerful slash of chakra rocket from the blade and towards Hiruzen. Doton, Doria Hiki. Katan, Kakiryu no Jutsu. Hiruzen performed the two jutsu in rapid succession as a large boulder of earth formed from the earth to try and block the strike, while from behind it a large dragon head made of fire shot over it and towards Naruto. The strike destroyed the wall of earth, showing how powerful it was, but being weakened by the earth wall, Hiruzen struck the slash with his adamantine staff and destroyed it while the fire dragon was still heading towards Naruto. Suiton, Suijin Hiki. Taking a deep breath, a large torrent of water shot out of Naruto's mouth and formed a large wall encampment around Naruto, creating a strong shield of water to protect him. The dragon hit the water wall and the wall managed to do its job, as steam was all that was left as the dragon disappeared. As Naruto landed on the ground, Hiruzen appeared next to him and did more hand seals. Doton, Doria Taiga. The ground beneath Naruto suddenly became soft and clumpy and found himself skidding as mud now covered his legs. Katan, Karyo Enden. With another jutsu, the dragon fire bullets shot forward and hit Naruto as his body engulfed in fire. Many in the arena looked worried and thought it was over, but watched as Naruto poofed out of existence, showing it was just a clone. Before they could scan where he was, they watched as Naruto dropped out of the sky with his right fist with chakra around it. He was coming down too fast and Hiruzen would never have been able to dodge it, so with his adamantine staff Hiruzen blocked Naruto's powerful strike. The amount of power was evident when a strong shockwave slammed into everything that was behind Hiruzen and destroyed was what remaining of one of the wall. Meanwhile, Hiruzen noticed that a very tiny crack appeared in his staff. The fact that his staff is supposedly indestructible, it shows how strong that strike was. Futon, Fukunai, Naruto said as kunais made of wind formed around him and shot off towards Hiruzen at a very quick speed. Katan, Gokaki no Jutsu, Hiruzen said as the fireball engulfed the kunais, getting rid of them completely before Naruto shot forward, and everyone that could see him move saw him draw its shusui as he now gripped his two swords in his hands. Two swords, huh? Many thought, since they guessed Naruto must have picked that up during his time away. Hiruzen held his staffs in his hands as he readied for the blades to him, but to his and everyone's surprise Naruto did not aim at him and instead spun around him. It was only as he watched Naruto spin around that he noticed his chakra and wind element were gathering. It's not meant to strike, it meant to push, Hiruzen suddenly realized, but before he could get away a powerful gust of wind suddenly picked up and slammed into Hiruzen, throwing him high into the air as he spun around out of control. Takanami, Naruto said as he watched as the wind threw Hiruzen into the air, while Kushina looked impressed at them over. Using swords and rotation to pick the wind up and slam it into the opponent. It's very effective and very creative, Kushina applauded as everyone else nodded. On the ground, Naruto watched as Hiruzen went into the air and began to fall back down again. He jumped and landed on the wall and caused the familiar swirling sound of the Rasengan to sound out. Everyone watched as the Rasengan formed into his hand as Naruto jumped from the wall towards Hiruzen and slammed it into the old Hokage's gut. Rasengan, Naruto called out as it hit its mark and threw Hiruzen from the air right into the wall back on the ground, making a loud crash ring out as a small dust cloud formed. Whoa, the twins both said, as did many of the other students and civilians. The shinobi looked a little awestruck out how this young shinobi was faring against a former Hokage. Naruto grinned and landed on the ground, but before he could do anything Hiruzen's staffs suddenly extended and slammed into his gut, forcing him back and slamming him into the wall as well. That sucked, Naruto complained as he felt the wing get completely knocked out of him. Everyone was on their feet as both shinobi were looking down at the arena. Naruto-chan and Hiruzen are really going at it. The arena is almost destroyed, Kushina said and looked down at the spot where her son landed. Well, I am not all that surprised. Sensei has wanted to test Naruto ever since he left to join the Guardians. I know he has been looking forward to this spar for some time, Tsunade stated. I don't think we can really call it a spar since the stadium is almost gone, Shikaku Nara stated with many nodding in agreement. As expected, Itachi said as Shizuka, Anko and Hana all sat with him in the stands having heard about this matchup earlier. He was bound to get stronger, but to go against a former Kage is nothing short of incredible, Kurenai stated as Asuma nodded his head with the other Jonin. Safe to say I think little Naruto has surpassed us all, Shizen said with many of the Jonin grumbling but knowing it was true. I think there are only a handful of people that could beat him now and they are all in Kage box. They looked up at the Kage box where Minato, Kushina, Tsunade and Mikoto were standing and they quickly all nodded. The chatter quickly died down when they saw both Naruto and Hiruzen get out of the holes in the wall. Hiruzen's helmet was gone as was the bit of clothing where the Rasengan hit. A scorch mark was present on his stomach and had multiple bruises and cuts forming on his face and arms with a small trickle of blood going down his forehead. Naruto was in a similar state with bruises and cut over his body but saw a large gash on the side of his face where he impacted the wall which was bleeding profusely and most of his shirt was gone, revealing his muscles body. Many of the females in the stadium blushed at him physique while others winced at the gash since it looked like a nasty one as blood kept leaking from it. I think you should get that gash seen too Naruto-kun, Hiruzen said but Naruto shook his head. I will afterwards. If I tried to use the Shosen in a real-life battle then the enemy would not give me a chance to heal myself, he stated as spat a bit of blood out of his mouth. Many agreed with the statement since it was very true. Hiruzen just nodded to him as Naruto sheathed Shigure and just had Shusui out. Quickly the two stormed forward and clashed again as the adamantine staff met the black blade. Itoryu, Shishido. A single long slash pushed towards Hiruzen as Naruto swung his blade down but Hiruzen blocked the strike with his staffs and caused it to vanish. Hiruzen swung his staff around his head before his hands went into his pouches. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hundreds of shurikens suddenly appeared in the air and sped towards Naruto who knew there were too many to count. It was rare to find someone who could create clones of ninja weapons in such a way but then again Hiruzen was the professor for a reason. Futon Danja Kanami, he said slamming his hands on the ground as a strong shockwave of wind hit the arena and forced the kunai away as Hiruzen held his hands in front of his face. As he did Naruto appeared and kicked him in the guy sending him towards the wall. However he landed on the wall and punched Naruto right where the gash was sending a strong wave of pain through Naruto's head and making him stumble back as more blood poured down his face. Hiruzen gave him an apologetic look but Naruto understood. In battle you use injuries to your advantage. Hiruzen nodded as the two began a match between Bojutsu and Kenjutsu. As sparks flew between them for the next 5 minutes those Jonin or above noticed Naruto moves had gotten slower and saw his face had gone a little pale. The wound on his head was now taking its toll on him. Though looking at Hiruzen they could see he had taken quite beating and with his old age he was beginning to slow down as well now. Hokage-sama we might want to stop them before one of them get badly hurt or before we lose the stadium completely, Shikaku offered as Minato nodded. Kushina looked at Naruto worriedly and she could see how nasty that wound on his head was. Minato gave the word to Tsunade who nodded and held her arm up for everyone to see. The match is over, she shouted as Naruto and Hiruzen's fists stopped just inches from one another's. Since we have no victor or a loser this match is a draw. The whole stadium was silent as the declaration but to Naruto's surprise no one booed but instead cheered and gave a round of applause for the amazing match they just watched. Onii-chan is the best, he could hear from Mito and Eiji as well as Mina who was sitting with Shizune. He looked up to see his mother clapping wholeheartedly shouting praise for her baby as was Makoto while Minato was sending him a proud look. He looked over at the Jonin and saw Kurenai give him an appraising nod and Asuma give him a thumbs up for being able to keep up with his old man. Guy and a mini clone of his were shouting about youth while Kakashi was too busy reading his Aika Aika. Naruto sighed happily to himself as he let himself fall to the ground with him landing on his butt as he took a breather. The throbbing pain in his head was horrid and it made him feel like he had an Anko hangover with no sleep. He felt Hiruzen sit down beside him as Enma changed back into his regular form and rub his shoulders. I don't think we have fought like that in nearly 2 decades, he said as Hiruzen quickly agreed with him before Enma returned to his home. Naruto enjoyed the rest as he looked over at his Gigi. "You weren't going all out, were you, Gigi?" he said as Hiruzen shrugged and smiled at him. "Maybe not, but we both know you weren't either," he said, referencing his Mokuton. Hiruzen was using a good 70% of his strength and Naruto was around the same. If the match had gone on any longer, then Hiruzen would have been the victor due to having more experience and Naruto's head injury. Despite that, he was proud of his surrogate grandson since he had become a splendid shinobi and now knew without a doubt Naruto would surpass him very soon. As they sat down talking, Tsunade along with Kushina appeared in front of them as Kushina began fussing over Naruto and telling him how proud she was of him. She gave him lots of mother kisses which made him blush a little and those still watching to laugh. "Look at the state of you two," Tsunade said, shaking her head at both of them as both Naruto and Hiruzen just gave her a cheesy smile. She rolled her eyes before she looked over at Kushina. "Let's get them to the hospital and get them patched up," Tsunade said, with Kushina agreeing completely as she took her son's right arm over her shoulder and helped him up while Tsunade did the same with Hiruzen before shushining away. Later that day, Naruto sat at Ichiraku's ramen with Hiruzen both covered in bandages in various spots as they enjoyed their ramen. Mito and Eiji were talking excitedly with Naruto and Hiruzen, asking all about their match and if they could teach them some of their jutsu. Kushina was right next to Naruto with as she kept checking his bandages were secure, with Naruto telling her he was fine. She didn't seem to get the hint. Minato meanwhile shook his head at his wife's actions as Mina was sat on his lap and peacefully ate their ramen together, ignoring the overbearing Kushina and the awestruck Mito and Eiji. They left that to Naruto to deal with. Chapter 23. "How you doing, Mito-chan? You having fun?" Naruto called as he sat on top of a low-leveled roof with his elbows propped up as he stared down at his sister who was picking up trash around the Hokage monument. "Oni-chan, stop bothering me," Mito whined, which only served to make Naruto laugh as he watched her team complete another D-rank mission. Her teammate Shikamaru was lazily tossing some trash into the black bag in his hands while the pale boy Sai got on with the job quietly. Beside Naruto was Kushina, who was reading a magazine as she watched her new team completely their mission. "This is stupid. How much longer are we going to be doing these stupid chores?" Mito called out in a huff as Shikamaru rolled his eyes. "Don't roll your eyes at me, lazy ass. Then stop complaining. You have done this for every mission for the last 3 months, he said as he yawned and scratched the back of his head. "But it's insulting to do this and it's embarrassing. You know, if you keep complaining it will cause you to get wrinkles, Flatty," Sai said as he gave Mito a creepy smile. "Bastard!" Mito shouted as she went to lunge at Sai, but Shikamaru stopped her as he tried to keep her from killing their teammate. "Come here and say that again. I'll kick your ass." "Mito-chan," Kushina called, lowering her magazine to look at her daughter and making Mito stop and look up at her mother. "These D ranks all help build up your credit and it will get you closer to obtaining the right to going on a C rank mission." "But Ka-chan," Mito whined, but a quickly stern look from Kushina quickly shut her up. Grumbling and kicking the dirt, she went back to picking up litter with a scowl now plastered on her face. Naruto watched them with an amused expression but got a flick on the ear from Kushina. "Don't you have anything better to do than rile up your little sister?" she said, raising an eyebrow at him. The response she got was a shrug. "It's too much fun and she is so easy to tease. Besides, it's the job of the older shinobi to tease the freshies. You probably did the same when you were in my position," he said to her as she got a faraway look on her face. That was true since she could remember teasing Minato's students Kakashi, Obito and Rin when they were a team together. Even though Kakashi graduated much earlier than the other two, they still had to do D ranks. "Don't you have a mission today?" she asked as she looked down at her son again, who went back to teasing his little sister who was trying to give him the scariest glare she could muster. "Yeah, but it's not for another hour. Besides, I already have everything packed," he said as he pointed to the scrolls on his hip and the seals on his arms. Okay then," Kushina said, going off the topic before she went on to a completely new. "So are there any girls that interest you?" she asked as Naruto looked up at her in surprise. That was not something he really wanted to discuss with his mother. It was a little too weird. Where is this going, he thought before answering her. No Ka-chan, no girls right now. I'm happy to just be on my own." Oh come on now, there must be someone to catch your attention. I hear Makoto's son is still with that girl from the Nadeshiko village. I can't let Makoto outdo me again, she said with a fire burning in her eyes that made him shake his head. So that's why. Sorry to disappoint Kachan, but there is no girl right now, so you will have to wait a little longer, Naruto said, making Kushina huff a little before nodding in acceptance. While the idea of some harlot trying to sink their claws into her eldest made her frown and want to bring the pain, she knew if she wanted grandchildren one day that she should have to suck it up. It didn't mean though that she could not help pick and push him in the direction of a girl she approved of. As Kushina looked down at the genin in front of her, Naruto felt a familiar presence sit down beside him. Turning his head, he saw Anko sitting there looking down at the new squad while twirling a kunai in her left hand. Breaking in the new blood? Anko said, grinning, which just made him roll his eyes at his teammate. Thought I would see how they are doing. They have promise, but Mito-chan is being impatient, he said loudly to make sure his sister could hear him. Mito glared back at him with a red face while Anko chuckled. Get used to it, Mito, cause it's not going to change for a while, Anko told her, making Mito huff in annoyance just like Kushina did moments earlier. So I thought you had work today? Was there not enough prisoners to keep you happy and contained? He teased, making Anko slap his arm playfully. I'm on my break and I thought I would come see you before I see Hana-chan. I won't get to see my two favorite people for a couple of days, she told him, pouting. But I feel there is another reason that you wanted to speak with me, he asked, seeing the hidden message in his friend's eyes. Anko nodded and leaned in closer towards him. Make sure my girl comes back safe and sound. I don't like it when she goes on missions without me. You know Hana is more than capable of looking after herself, Anko-chan. She is a jonin after all. I know, and I am not saying she is weak by any means. But she is not like you, Itachi and I. She is not quite at the level we are at, and I don't want her to get too over her head. You know she can be a little prideful. Hell, I know she can be prideful. In the bedroom it's always a wrestle to see who comes out on top and who gets to be submissive and who gets to be dominant. Naruto waved his hand. Too much information, but I see where you're coming from, he muttered before putting his arm around his longtime friend to reassure her. Normally Anko would have been fine with Hana going on mission, but he guessed that since they were going to Kiri, where a civil war had only just finally ended, it made her a little anxious. I will make sure your girl come back home safe and sound. It's a promise on my way of the shinobi, he said, putting his pinky finger out in front of him. Anko understood the gesture and wrapped her pinky around his. She then leaned in and gave him a peck on the cheek, showing her softer side to one of her true friends. Thank you. Anytime, Anko-chan. I don't make promises I can't keep. The two longtime friends sat and spoke with one another for 5 minutes, with Kushina occasionally leaning in to try and hear what they were saying. Though all the two spoke about was the training schedule for their spars with Itachi, Hana, Hay-8 and Yugo. Once Anko left to see Hana, Naruto left 20 minutes later after saying goodbye to his mother and sister and headed towards the south gate where he would be meeting with his team. 4 days later, Naruto jumped off the edge of a wooden boat and landed on a small wooden harbor where other small boats were docking and leaving with their various trade goods. He took a look around his surroundings and frowned a little, since there was a lot of mist currently covering a lot of the small harbor town. Without his sensor abilities, he knew they would be walking blind. Though I don't sense anyone harmful at the moment, we get moving while we can, he thought before he motioned for his two partners behind him to follow after him. Hana quickly followed after with her 3 Nin-ken walking closely to her side and on constant alert, while on her other side was their teammate Hay-8. Though Hay-8 was still sickly and probably always would be, he had really stepped up as a shinobi and proved that he could fight just like everyone else in his age group, and quickly became a prominent member of their generation and someone that many other sickly children could look up to as a role model. While not quite as powerful as his blonde-haired friend, Hay-8 was well versed in kenjutsu and had a talent for fire jutsu and taijutsu. It made him a strong ally and a problematic enemy. The village hidden in the mist is said to be about 5 hours from this dock site, and we will have to cross a lake on foot to get there, Naruto said as he walked forwards. If we get there before mid-afternoon, then we should be able to avoid needing to stay in the area for too long. Right, that's probably for the best. They may still be antsy with the civil war only just having ended. Hana spoke up. Remember, this is simply a delivery mission. We give the given message scroll to the new Mizukage, wait for the response, and then we leave. We will be in and out of the village within an hour. Could this not be something the Hokage could not just send by hawk? Hayate asked, thinking it would just be easier, but he quickly saw Naruto shake his head. Normally it would be, but seeing as my father has 3 of his jonin delivering it personally, we can only assume that whatever message it contains is of great importance. Both of his friends nodded before the trio checked around them, made sure they had everything before they took off into the nearby trees and traveled along the top of the branches at great speed. Naruto was perched at the front, Hana in the middle and Hayate covering them from the back. They stayed in that formation for 2 hours as they traveled to the village hidden in the mist. Naruto was surprised just how true that name was as they traveled towards their destination. The mist was everywhere and it was so thick that you could barely see in front of you. You barely had at least 2 or 3 meters of clear vision until the mist would set in. Sometimes it was even lower than that. I can't let my guard down for even a second. An ambush or any kind could be waiting for us at any moment. I'm starting to think sending a hawk might have been the better choice. When they estimated that they were at least 2/3 of the way there to the village, both Hayate and Hana stopped immediately when they saw Naruto stopped right in his tracks and had a focused look in his eyes as he scanned around them. What is it? Hayate asked before he noticed Hana and her Ninken were growling and sniffing the air. They had smelt something, and whatever it was making them get ready. Hayate, Hana, Manji formation, he called as the trio quickly got back to back while the Ninken were stationed left, right and center by Hana with their jaws snapping at the air. How many? Naruto scanned his surroundings and felt 6 people all around them. From what he could tell, they were all stationed at various points and at different heights. 6 at least. Be careful. They have the home field advantage here and they know how to use the mist. No action unless given cause to. When he finished speaking, something twirling through the air could be heard coming towards them. Before Hana and Hayate could react, Naruto had already drawn Shusui from his back and struck a large demon shuriken that was aimed right at him. The broken parts of the shuriken split into 2 and embedded themselves in a nearby tree. Whoa, Hayate said at how quickly his friends reacted before they heard quick steps coming towards them. Attack! They looked up to see a shinobi wearing an umbu-like mask drop down right in the center of them with a blade drawn out. I got him, Hayate said as he unsheathed his blade and clashed with the shinobi and managed to push him away. From the front, Naruto's attention turned in front of him and sensed 3 people coming towards him while 2 more were headed for Hana. Suiden no jutsu, he heard before he slammed his hands onto the ground and performed his own jutsu. Dotun, Doriahiki, he called as a large wall formed in front of him. Hana 2 coming for you from your left, he called as Hana nodded and quickly spotted them with her enhanced sense of smell. Her eyes became more canine-like and her nails got more feral as she went down onto all 4 with her Ninken stationed with her. Fawn over fawn, she whispered before lunging through the air as Naruto engaged the 3 hunter-like shinobi that jumped over the earth-made wall. The attack made Hana twirl in the air with her Ninken and it looked like a horizontal tornado was ripping through the air. She drew closer towards the 2 attacking shinobi and slammed into one, successfully hitting him in the chest and destroying his lungs and heart while the other managed to sidestep out of the way and drew a sword. Hana landed on her feet and gripped a kunai tightly in her hands. Above them, Hayate was battling previous attacking Kiri ninja and was holding himself well and was making ground against his enemy. Cough, who are, cough, you? He asked, but the shinobi chose not to answer and continued to attack. Their swords caused sparks to fly off when the metal connected. Hayate ducked from a swift strike from the shinobi and brought up his blade to block another strike. Hayate continued to dodge and could see from his opponent's movements that he was getting more and more frustrated at not being able to land a hit on his foe. His movements were getting more sloppy and his swings were getting slower. Are you with Kiri or the new Godain Mizukage? Hayate asked, but all he got was angry strikes back at him. Cough, so be it. Meanwhile, Naruto blared at 2 of the enemy shinobi who had a sword each gripped in their hands. The third, meanwhile, was currently stuck in a headlock in Naruto's right arm. both arms were broken from where he tried to rush. A strong punch to the gut quickly incapacitated his enemy before he snapped their neck with an extreme amount of force. Since I'm trying to get to Kiri quickly, I'm going to make this quick. I really don't have the time of the patience to have to deal with you right now, he said as he drew out Shigure as well and held both blades in front of him. He then watched as the two Anbu Doubt teamed him and flew forward. His swords clashed with his opponents and watched as they tried to push him back. Their other hands came up to take a swing at Naruto, but he easily dodged them with a bored expression on his face. Have to do better than that, he told them as his foot glowed green and he slammed his foot into the ground. Cracks formed on the ground as a mini earthquake suddenly hit the area, making everyone stumble in surprise, especially the two Anbu that he was fighting. A huge crater formed from where Naruto had slammed his foot and cracked all along the ground around 6 inches wide began to form. Taking chance of the opportunity, he brought Shigure up into the air. He jumped up into the air as well and slashed down on the surprised Anbu. Hiryu, Kane. The moment he slashed his opponent and watched them fall back as the attack did its supposed damage, the Anbu member burst into flames as he choked out blood from underneath his mask. Bastard, he heard the other Anbu call out as he pushed forward as a dragon made of water shot forward towards Naruto with its large red eyes boring into Naruto as it raced forward. Naruto narrowed his eyes and gripped both Shigure and Shusui tightly in his hands and held them to the side as he closed his eyes. Yakadori, he muttered as he swung both his swords together at the same time as a large slash of compressed air formed from the slash that were so dense that the slash made a crescent moon-shaped object that sailed towards the attack at great speed. The moment it connected, the water dragon split right down the middle and dispersed to the sides of Naruto, narrowly avoiding him and destroying the few trees that were behind him. Naruto then pushed off from the ground and appeared in front of the Anbu as he was in the middle of performing hand signs. At least he was, until the Anbu suddenly found his hands flying in the other direction courtesy of Naruto cutting them off. Before the Anbu could even say a word, Naruto brought his right foot up and kicked the Anbu high into the air, breaking his jaw on the process. Pumping chakra into his legs, Naruto jumped high into the air and was back to facing the Anbu, who looking in incredible pain. Checkmate, Naruto told the Anbu before he pumped chakra into his right leg and with a powerful super strength kick. The kick connected with the man's head and sent his head sailing through the air and into the mist-filled valley while his body dropped to the ground lifelessly. Naruto then fell to the ground doing a backflip as he did and landed on top of a tree branch before he casually walked down the tree and placed Shigure and Shusui back into their sheaths and back to being sealed into his arms. He dusted of his jacket as he looked up into the air and watched Hayate flip through the air, still battling his foe, while to his left he saw Hana performing a second Fong over Fong on her opponent and saw that it connected. The attack sent the Anbu flailing through the air and slammed right into a tree hard. Naruto whistled and nodded before he felt two new signs appear around them. One felt hostile like the other Anbu, while another felt curious and more calm than the others. The hostile one, however, he sensed appeared behind Hana. A glint of metal caught Naruto's eye from the mist and saw a barely visible human shape appear. Hana thought was none the wiser as she checked her foe's pulse, and Naruto pushed himself forward, intent on keeping his promise to Anko. Hana knelt by the Anbu and checked his pulse and sighed when she felt he was definitely dead. It happened so quickly she was not even sure what happened. The moment she turned around, she saw the familiar shapes of shurikens and kunai get thrown towards her at a fast rate. She wanted to move, but using multiple Fong over Fong had taken it out of her, along with the triplets who were each panting a little. Doing what she could, she brought up her arms to protect herself while the triplets tried to pull her out of the way by pulling on her bottoms, but were not having any luck. Before they could hit, however, she watched as the back of Naruto head appeared in front of her and watched him catch the shuriken in midair before throwing them right back towards the hidden enemy at an even faster rate. The kunai he blocked with his sword Shigure and sent them so they were embedded in the trees. "You alright, Hana-chan?" he asked, turning around, seeing Hana's stunned look on her face, and watched her nod her head as she took deep breaths. "I'm okay. Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said, with Naruto nodding back at her. She was disappointed in herself that she froze up that way and let someone get the drop on her. She should have smelled him coming, but she was captivated in making sure her opponent was dead that she and triplets let their guard down. "Try and keep your senses open at all times, Hana-chan. I would hate to have to tell Anko-chan that something happened to you, he told her and saw her nod looking upset with herself, but that quickly changed when she noticed that Naruto had a kunai embedded in his left shoulder. Hold still, she said softly as she walked close towards him and pulled out the kunai from his shoulder. She saw his hand get brought up to heal the wound, but he was stopped when she placed her own on there first. Her hands glowed green and Naruto felt the wound slowly begin to heal up. It's the least I can do. Just because I can heal animals doesn't mean I don't have some skill in healing people too. Tsunade-sama was nice enough to show me a few tricks. Naruto nodded and turned his head when he saw Heiei sheathing his sword away with a few cuts on his body but nothing serious. Behind him though Naruto saw the man that he had felt earlier and now looking at him, Naruto had to admit he looked and felt strangely familiar. A familiar mask covered his face with familiar navy blue hair that stood up with tags pierced onto each of his ears. He stood looking at the man before he walked over to him and stopped just in front of him. Are you friend or foe? Naruto asked, tensing his body as this man was a rogue like the other shinobi they had just faced. Behind him Hana and Heiei stood closely behind Naruto and kept a close eye on the man in front of them. Are you the leaf shinobi that the Hokage sent to meet with the new Godain Mizukage? He asked and saw Naruto nod his head. Yes we are. So you're a friend then? Now the Umbu nodded and removed his mask revealing a man in his late 30s with an eye patch covering his right eyes. My name is Ao, Umbu captain of Kiri and right-hand man of the new Mizukage, he told them. I was told by Mizukage-sama to meet you before you got to the village but I see you encountered problems. Naruto examined the man and he felt what was behind the eye patch. A Byakugan. With that discovery he remembered where he saw this man last. The day he fought Raiga Kurisuke, he was the Umbu that Naruto gave the twin swords to as long as her got to keep the body of Raiga. Yes, you could say something like that. Naruto said looking around at the bodies before telling Hana and Heiei to pile them up and burn the bodies. Who are they? They are remnants of the Yondain Mizukage Yagura's forces. Despite Yagura being dead he still has troops loyal to him and believing in his cause to wipe out those with bloodlines. There is team out looking for these people as we speak but I will have to send a messenger hawk ordering them back. Naruto nodded and they watched as Heiei performed a fire jutsu and set the bodies ablaze. Come I will guide you the rest of the way to Kiri. These paths can be treacherous as I'm sure you youngsters have already noticed, he said before he took off through the trees. Try to keep up otherwise you might take a nasty fall. The three raised their eyebrow at the older shinobi before they took off after him along the trees. The journey with Ao leading them took about half the time with the veteran shinobi leading the way and took them the safest way towards Kiri. Once they got to the end of the island they were on, they ran the rest of the way towards Kiri and eventually they came across the village hidden in the mist. This was the first time any of them had gone to the mist village and they quickly deduced it was definitely one of the more naturally protected by the elements around it and deserved the title hidden in the mist. The name was well earned and despite its size they could still barely see it. As they got closer the visibility got clearer but with the mist and the cold temperature it felt like they were walking into a completely different world. Walking through the gates the mist seemed to clear and the people and the building became clearer. Men, women and children were walking about the village going on with their day while shinobi patrolled the roofs. Taking the leaf shinobi to see the Mizukage, Ao stated towards the two gates guard who lazily nodded to the man. Naruto had to guess this village had their own versions of Izumo and Kotetsu. Damn upstarts. Ao complained as they ventured their way through the village. Looking at the village the trio were surprised at how familiar to the leaf village it was. The building's designs were very familiar and the civilians wore similar clothing though thicker due to the cold weather. They saw some of the shinobi looking at them from the rooftops, obviously keeping an eye on them. Naruto couldn't blame them since the leaf village would probably do the same thing when they visitors from others' villages in their homes. Along the buildings Naruto saw a lot of the buildings had been damaged and were currently under reconstruction along with new construction site in various places. Many were being made out of stone and large rock-like materials. From what he could gather it looked like apartment buildings were being built for their shinobi. They were still rebuilding and gathering their strength after the civil war had ended 6 months ago. With the new Mizukichi, whoever they were, Kiri had managed to set up a new council and government as well as bring in the civilians and shinobi that fled from the village at the start of the civil war. Eventually, after a 15-minute walk, they came to a large building similar to the Hokage building, and they knew they had arrived to the residence of the Mizukichi. Entering inside, Ao nodded to the guards before he took them up a flight of stairs and stopped at the 3rd floor.
"Chojuro, is Mizukichi-sama in?"
Ao asked as they entered a reception's office, and they saw a blue-haired teen with a large sword covered in bandages just exiting the Mizukichi's office. They guessed he was either their age or at least a year younger. He looked a little nervous and timid when Ao began speaking with him, and it looked like he had a blush on his face when he walked out the office.
Hi Ao-senpai. Are these the Leaf Shinobi?"
he asked nervously, looking over at the trio, who gave him a small wave, trying to be polite and friendly. "They are Chojuro," he said before turning serious to the younger shinobi.
"Chojuro, I need you to go the messenger Hawk Pei and send out a message to Squad 5.
Tell them the group they are tracking have already been found and dealt with, and they are to return home." They saw Chojuro look over it towards them and saw him focus in on Naruto before he yelped back in surprise. "The Yandame Hokage's son," he said, panicked to their surprise before Ao got his attention back to him with a glare.
"Hi senpai.
I'll get right on it," he said, and hurried out of the room, nervously avoiding Naruto as he went by.
What was that all about?"
Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow before hearing Ao snort.
"Why do you think? Did you not see the giant sword on his back?"
Ao asked, further confusing them before Ao knocked on the door in front of them while nodding to the receptionist behind the desk. Naruto, Hana, and Hey-8 all heard a soft voice telling them to come in as Ao pushed the door open and ushered them to come in.
Stepping, both Naruto and Hey-8 understood what had Chojuro so red and flushed in appearance.
The Mizukichi, who was sat behind a desk doing paperwork, was easily one of the most beautiful women that either of them had seen. She had a slender build with green eyes, an ankle-length, auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark blue band, and with 4 bangs at the front. 2 bangs are short, with one covering her right eye, and 2 are long, crossing each other on her bust, just below her chin. She wore a long-sleeves blue shirt that left her shoulders and the very top of her breasts exposed. Underneath, she wears a mesh armor and leggings with a dark-colored pair of shorts covering everything above the thighs. Naruto did everything he could to hide a blush, but it was not working out too well.
Hey-8 did not even bother trying to hide it and looked ready to faint at any moment. Even Hana looked a little hot and bothered by her.
However, despite his blush, when Naruto looked at her, he felt like he knew her from somewhere. She resembled a certain someone in his life, and it was intriguing him.
"Thank you, Ao," she said in a silky voice as Ao nodded and took his spot behind her and leaned against the wall.
She then turned to face them with a polite smile on her face. Despite appearances, this woman was the Mizukichi for a reason and knew that they should be on their guard just in case.
"My name is Mei Terumi, the Godane Mizukichi of Kirigakure.
I hope you all had a safe journey to our village. I would hate if the leaf found out any of you were hurt in any way. I formally welcome you to our lovely village," said politely as the trio gave her a bow.
"Especially you, Naruto-san. I am surprised the Hokage sent his eldest to come and see me." "So you know who I am then?"
he asked as she motioned for him to take a seat while Hana and Hey-8 stood up behind him. Behind her desk, the Mizukichi chuckled. "Naruto-san, you will find that in Kiri you have become something of a legend here," she told him. "In the last 5 years you have fought and killed 2 of Kiri's 7 swordsmen. One of which was a low A class and the other a high A class shinobi. You have many of our shinobi tense and nervous when you entered through the gates, I'm sure."
He nodded before realizing what Ao meant with Chojuro. He guessed the kid he met was a 7 swordsman in training,
though he was unsure which sword it was he was carrying. "Is that why Kiri still has a dead or alive bounty on my head?" he asked, and just saw May continue to smile at him. "I may have forgotten to get rid of that," she said sweetly.
That was mainly Yagura being paranoid.
He didn't like the idea of youngsters like you becoming so powerful at such a young age.
He nodded, though was unsure if he believed her.
He guessed her shinobi side was being covered up by this sweet and sultry mask she had created.
"As true as that may sound, we won't have a problem here, will we?"
I don't feel like losing my head anytime soon, Naruto stated with Mei just continuing to smile at him as his hand rested on the seal that Shusui was sealed in. Behind her Mei knew Ao was tensing and preparing himself, but she waved him off, signaling that it was okay with Naruto doing the same for Hana and Hayate who were on guard and preparing themselves. I'm glad that we understand one another, Mei-sama. I hope you don't mind me calling you Mei-sama? He said with Mei shaking her head. Not at all, Naruto-san. I have never been one for honorifics, she stated as he nodded, though Ao rolled his eyes, thinking his Mizukage should not be acting so nonchalant with the foreigners. That's good to hear. Well, in any case we should just get this over with, he said as he put his left over his right wrist and channeled chakra into a small storage scroll. A small pop sound was heard and a bit of smoke before Naruto revealed a scroll in his hands. This is from our Yandame Hokage for your eyes and your eyes only, he said seriously as he handed the scroll over to the Mizukage. Mei readily took it and everyone watched her take on a more serious look as she opened the scroll and slowly began to read it. The team of Leaf Shinobi sat quietly in the office as they waited for a response from the beautiful Mizukage. Behind Mei, Ao was trying to look over her shoulder and Naruto even suspected he was tempted to use his Byakugan to read what it said. But one look from Mei made him go pale and look away. 5 minutes later Naruto, Hana and Hayate watched as Mei finished writing a response back to the Hokage in a similar-looking message scroll before sealing it up and handing it over to Naruto. This is my response to the Hokage. In short, you can tell him I accept the proposal, but give him the scroll for a more detailed answer. Naruto nodded and watched as Mei leaned back in her chair and stared at him. Staring right back at her as he sealed it away into his wrist, he narrowed his eyes as his earlier thoughts about her came back. Why does she look so familiar, he thought as he looked her over. The hair and the jade green eyes were entirely new on him, but it was the skin tone and the shape of her face that bothered him. It was on the edge of his tongue, but it kept evading him. Namikaze-san, I ask that you stop staring at the Mizukage. Ao spoke up roughly as Naruto was brought out of his thoughts while Mei had a small grin on her face, mentally cheering that at 36 she could still make young men fall for her looks and charms. Her generosity of being partners with the Leaf will only go so far, so don't get any ideas, he spoke, not noticing Mei's hair suddenly fall in front of her eyes, shadowing them over. Partners? As in a wife and husband? She thought glumly before turning back to look at Ao. Shut up, Ao, or I'll kill you, she told him in a bittersweet voice that made Ao look like he had just been kicked in the crotch and have an aura of fear wrap around him like a blanket. Scary, everyone thought, while unbeknownst to everyone else Naruto's eyes widened in size as realization hit him and began realization who this woman reminded him of. The hair and eyes might be different, but some of the mannerisms and the way she speaks are the same with her. If I have her grow her hair out like Mei-san's, then they would almost match, he thought before he decided to put it to the back of his mind for now. If that will be all, that perhaps at time we left, Naruto spoke as he stood up, trying to stick with the plan of not staying in the village for more than an hour. Of course, Naruto-san, Mei responded as she too stood up. Just as she did though, they all heard a tap on the window, and turning around they all saw a Konoha messenger hawk by the window. Confused and surprised, she opened the window and took out the little message the bird carried before offering it to Naruto. It's addressed to you, she said, surprised, as did Naruto and the other Leaf Shinobi. Taking the message, he opened it up and scanned the contents laid out by his father. Everyone watched as they saw a confused look turn from an angry look until it settled on a grinning look as he nodded his head. Do you have a piece of paper and a pen I could use, Mei-sama? He asked with Mei nodding and handing over some paper and ink from her drawer. Quickly writing a response, he replied back the message, and sending the hawk back off to Konoha, he turned around towards Hana and Hayate. It seems Kakashi and his genin team ran into some trouble in Wave Country. We've been instructed to go help them, he said with Hana and Hayate quickly nodding. They were both about to leave, but saw Naruto staying put and turned to look at Mei. My father wrote in the message that this could be a good chance to test out the possible alliance between Kiri and Konoha, he stated as he handed the note over to a surprised-looking Mei Terumi, who began to examine the message. A moment later a look of realization came to her face as well as surprise before she turned to look at Naruto with a big smile on her face. Yes, Naruto-san. I think this will work out perfectly, she stated as they grinned at one another, leaving the others in the room to wonder just what they were talking about.
A few minutes later, Naruto stood in an alley just outside of Mizukage Tower. He bite his thumb and goes through some familiar hand signs before saying, Kuchios no Jutsu. A small white tiger cub with bright green eyes appeared in a puff of smoke, who purred the minute it saw Naruto. Naruto, sending another message to Dash. Sho, Gaia, I still haven't told anyone about that yet, but yes I am. He replied, putting a scroll in the cub's mouth before she disappeared again, leaving a smiling Naruto behind. Chapter 24. Wave. Standing in front of a nice little 3-bedroom house, Naruto knocked against the wooden door as Hana and Hayate stood on his left and right side. The triplets were stationed between Hana and himself, all three sniffing the area and making sure there were no enemy signatures around to cause problems. Since Wave Country was not all that far from Water Country, it only took them about 2 days to arrive at the Merchant Country. Wave Country was a country where they had no shinobi of their own since they had their own natural defenses. The country was a simple trading country that many of the minor countries and a few major countries did business with. It was not often that they got requests from Wave Country since the country overall was normally a very quiet yet peaceful place. From behind the wooden door, Naruto heard a few voices suddenly cease and go silent. Light footsteps were then heard coming closer to the door until stopping with the door sliding open. Standing in front of him was a beautiful woman with dark hair that looked to be in her early 30s, dressed in a pink blouse and a dark blue skirts. Behind her he could see an older man in his 60s sitting at a small table with a glass of sake in front of him. "May I help you?" she asked politely, looking at the newcomers but having an idea of who they were given their headbands. "Hello, miss. My name's Naruto and these are my teammates Hana and Hayate. We are from Konoha and were told to arrive at this location by our Hokage after receiving a requiring backup letter from Kakashi Hatake," Naruto told her, and saw the recollection appear in her eyes before she nodded. "Please come in," she welcomed them, stepping to the side and allowing them entry into their home. The home was cozy and comfortable and was definitely one of the better-looking houses from what he had seen from the town so far. It showed that the area had fallen on very hard times. As soon as they walked in and entered the small dining room, Naruto saw Eiji sitting by the small table reading one of the books their father had given him about Fuinjutsu. Hearing their footsteps, Eiji looked up, where his face brightened tenfold when he saw his older brother walk into the room. He got up and quickly hugged his older brother tightly, which was reciprocated by Naruto. "I'm glad you're here," he heard Eiji whispered, whereas Naruto patted his on the shoulder. While Eiji would not admit it freely, he had been spooked big time, but the arrival of one of the 7 ninja swordsmen, Zabuza, had scared the life out of him. The man was the definition of dangerous and was able to go toe-to-toe with Kakashi of all people. They had only managed to still be alive because he and Sasuke were lucky enough to free Kakashi after he got caught. The other 2 members of the team, Sasuke and Sakura, were both sitting around the table as well. Sasuke was looking out the window with a brooding look plastered on his face, while Sakura was staring at Sasuke with an adoring look. Fangirl was the only though that ran through the heads of Naruto, Hana, and Hayate as Naruto put his arm over his little brother's shoulder. "Are you okay?" It scared him a little to hear my little brother encountered Zabuza Momochi of all people. "Are you hurt anywhere?" he asked, and saw Eiji shake his head negatively. "I'm okay, but Kakashi-sensei is upstairs in bed. He overused his Sharingan in the fight and has been bedridden for the last 2 days." For the next 10 minutes he listened to Eiji as he explained what had happened when they left Konoha for their supposed C-rank mission. Only 3 hours after they had set off, they had been attacked by the Demon Brothers, 2 well-known thugs of Zabuza. They were only C-rank criminals in the bingo books, but it was more than enough for a couple of genin. Eiji and Sasuke had managed to protect the client until Kakashi appeared and took them out after observing who they were after. Though Naruto had wished Kakashi had taken his brother and his team back to the village, he couldn't fault them for wanting to continue the mission. Though Kakashi should have known that someone like Zabuza must have been lying in wait. After 3 days had passed and arriving on the banks of Wave Country, where they were met by Zabuza, who immediately began to battle Kakashi. From what Eiji described to him, it was intense before Kakashi fell into a trap and got himself caught, only to later be freed from the combined teamwork of Eiji and Sasuke.
Naruto wanted to berate Eiji, but he knew he would have done something similar if the situation had been reversed. So he just patted him on the shoulder, getting a happy grin from Eiji. He swore even Sasuke's mouth twitched upwards for even a moment. Kakashi then fought Zabuza again before eventually defeating Zabuza with his own move. But before he could land a final blow, a masked nin who apparently was a hunter nin from Kiri arrived and took him out before leaving with the body. Naruto turned to look at Hana and Hayate and he could see they both knew something was wrong with what they just heard. Considering where they just came from, he knew there were no Kiri hunter nins currently out looking for Zabuza. The Mizukage had already told them that this was first time they had heard from about Zabuza in over a year and that all their hunter nins were still stationed in Kiri, helping to train the next generation of hunter nins. That was no hunter nin, Hana told them as she patted one of her 3 dogs on the head. Eiji, Sasuke and Sakura turned their heads towards her. We just came from Kiri and a meeting with the Mizukage. She has no hunter nins currently searching for Zabuza. They heard Sakura gasp. But then who was that person with the mask? Most likely, someone working with Zabuza, Hayate answered. He has been gone a long time, but it's not surprising Zabuza may have found some new additions to his little group. Eiji-kun, where did the hunter nin hit him exactly? Where on the body? Hana asked, with Eiji telling them he was hit twice in the neck with sunbon needles. Hana feared this. He was put in a death-like state. Make the heartbeat so shallow that it masks the shinobi still being alive. Zabuza is very much alive and still out there. Naruto ran a hand through his hair and saw Eiji, Sakura and Sasuke look a little fearful at the idea of Zabuza still being alive. He had left a lasting impression on the trio and he couldn't blame them. It was their first mission outside of the village and they ended up running into one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. We will need to speak to Kakashi about this. But first we need to focus on these 3. No doubt they will be in the firing range since Zabuza and his accomplices will want them gone. Zabuza strikes me as a prideful person. Hana tapped her chin. She didn't know a whole lot of medical ninjutsu, but she knew enough to make her a novice. Thankfully her time with Anko helped her when it came to the human body and what certain effects can happen to them when put in specific states. Zabuza is not dead, but he will need time to heal. He will be bedridden for at least 10 days until he is back at full strength. 2 days have passed since the battle, so that gives us 8 days until he would likely attack again. Which means we have 8 days to whip these guys into shape, Naruto muttered before turning his attention back to Eiji and his team. Have you and your team done much training since you arrived? He asked and inwardly was not surprised that Eiji shook his head, which was followed by similar head shakes from the other 2 members of Team 7. Naruto pinched his nose before taking a big sigh and looking towards Eiji and his team. Okay, then tell me what Kakashi has been doing with you so far in terms of training. How far have you gotten? Eiji scratched the back of his head nervously, obviously showing a negative sign to the trio of jonin that recently arrived. Kakashi-sensei has been teaching us teamwork skills and had us work on the tree climbing exercises so far, they heard Sakura tell them. They waited for her to continue but quickly realized she had already finished. All 3 of them looked at them in disbelief. That's it? That's all he has taught you in a month? He got 3 nods in response to his question. That's ridiculous, Hana piped up, looking less than impressed and angry at the veteran jonin that was leading these 3 genin. That is something you should have done in your first week. Why is that all you have learnt? Kakashi-sensei is always 3 hours late, Sakura told them as she twiddled her thumbs on her lap. We do an hour of teamwork exercises and then we go to D-rank missions. After that he tells us to go home. Naruto and Hana both felt like pulling their hair out while Hayate shuffled away from them. Good-for-nothing scarecrow, the both muttered before Naruto took an empty scroll out from one of the seals on his arm and put it on the table. He then pulled out a brush and ink. Alright, I'm going to be straight with you 3, he told them as the 3 13-year-olds looked at him. Right now you are way behind where you should be. Eiji and Sasuke might be ahead given their clan training, but you Sakura aren't where you should be. Sakura looked down, disappointed in herself as she nodded. She knew she was the weakest in the group despite being the smartest. But the three of you should be further along, and it was Kakashi's job to ensure you got the right training. Obviously he has not done that, which means for the next 8 days you three will be working your asses off. Understand? He told them and saw all three of them nod. Eiji looked happy, Sasuke had a tiny grin on his face while Sakura had a determined look appear on her face. Have all three of you completed the tree walking exercise? Hana asked as she planned on helping Naruto with the training plan for them. All three nodded their heads, which was a relief to the three jonin. Then we can start on the next exercise. Naruto told them. Hey, every morning I want you to teach them the water walking exercise. That will improve their chakra control and their reserves. You three will do that every morning until you can do the exercise without even thinking about it. The trio nodded, though Sasuke looked a little miffed that he had to listen to his brother's friends. In the afternoon we will focus on your individual skills and raise them up. If I think it's possible, we might even teach you guys a new jutsu or two. Understand? The three genin nodded their heads while Tazuna and Tsunami, who had simply watched and listened for the last 30 minutes, were impressed at how quickly Naruto had taken control. Tazuna stood up as he prepared to leave for the bridge and continue with its construction. Since it's still morning, you three will go out with Hey-8 and begin the water walking exercise. Hey-8, don't let them come back until they can stand on the water for at least 30 seconds. Will, do, Hey-8 responded as he stood up and ushered for the genin to follow him. The trio left, each looking excited and determined and obviously happy they were getting some real training, though Sasuke did glare at Naruto for a few moments but quickly got moving when Naruto gave him a look indicating him to get ass moving. Being a jonin had its perks when it came to the genin. As they left, Naruto made 2 shadow clones. Tazuna-san, these clones will go with you to the bridge and keep guard for you. I promise nothing will get past them, he told Tazuna, who nodded his head in gratitude as he left after saying goodbye to his daughter. Once everyone left, Hana looked at Naruto irately and slammed a hand down on the table. What the hell was Kakashi thinking? What was the Hokage thinking? They should have been sent straight back to the village the moment they ran into the demon brothers. How could Kakashi be so foolish? Let's go and find out, Naruto told her as they both stood up and walked up the flight of stairs with Naruto in front and Hana following closely behind. Hana was beyond furious. She and Kiba might not see eye to eye right now, but it didn't mean she stopped caring about him. If she found out that her little brother had run into a shinobi with the caliber of Zabuza Momochi, she would have been irate and would be calling for Kakashi's head. She knew Naruto long enough to know when he was angry. And by the look in his eye she could tell Kakashi, and to an extent his father, had really angered him. 20 minutes later, a sleepy and exhausted Kakashi woke up having dreamed of beautiful girls in bikinis in a large hot tub. He groaned and went to sit up, but instead felt a weight on his chest. Blinking the sleepers out of his eyes, he looked up to see Hana's 3 Ninken with their paws on his chest, snarling at him. He gulped before his face went pale when he noticed Naruto and Hana sitting with their backs to the wall and both with their arms crossed. Both had narrowed eyes and he could have sworn he heard Naruto's knuckles cracking. So I'm guessing you're the backup? Kakashi asked timidly. Neither gave him an answer before Hana slammed the door closed and he watched Naruto activate silencing seals around the room. Outside, Hey-8 watched as Eiji, Sasuke and Sakura continued to fall into the ice-cold water, oblivious to what was happening inside. He was having too much fun watching the genin fall into the water like suckers. The trio shook in their wet clothes, oblivious to the beating and scolding their sensei was being given. Next day, Naruto stood in the makeshift training field he and Hana had made for the 3 genin as they stood off to the side and watched Eiji, Sakura and Sasuke run laps around the field, each looking a little different than the other. Hey-8 was currently guarding the bridge builder with Kakashi, who was walking around thanks to the Shosenjutsu. Eiji looked relatively okay thanks to his Uzumaki stamina with only a light sweat on his forehead. Sasuke trailed slightly behind a few paces, looking a bit more out of breath than his blonde-haired teammate, but was still able to keep up the pace. And then trailing behind was Sakura, whom the 2 boys had managed to lap twice already and looked ready to collapse at any moment. Since yesterday they had watched the trio of genin and cooked up a familiar training regimen that each would perform each day in hopes that their strength and skills will be improved enough to help with the incoming threat of Zabuza.
Eiji Naruto knew well enough since his range of skills and moves were similar to their father in that he relied more on speed than power and preferred taijutsu and his tri-pronged kunai in combat situations. He and Mito were alike in that they were close mid-range fighters. He had Eiji focus on his speed and used weight seals on his legs and arms. He had him spar with a shadow clone of his.
Sasuke was a little different in that his was more a ninjutsu fighter, and with his fire jutsu and taijutsu prowess, he could switch ranges from long distance to close up.
So Naruto had asked him what fire jutsus he knew and had him practice 2 new katan jutsu. He told Sasuke every time he mastered a katan jutsu he would give him 1 more while they were on the mission. Sasuke had tried to push his luck but got quickly put in his place when Naruto twisted his arm behind him and shoved him to the ground, reminding him who his superior was. Sakura though was by far the worst in terms of physical skills. The girl was smart for sure and her chakra control was impressive, but that was due to her reserves being so tiny. She would get tired too easily and had told them she was on a diet so she could keep her figure.
Naruto had face-palmed big time while Hana was left incensed. She told him she would deal with Sakura and would personally train the girl.
If there was one thing Hana had picked up from her girlfriend, it was a deep hatred for fangirls. "Keep moving, Pinky, or I'm setting the triplets on your ass," Hana shouted to Sakura when the pink-haired girl had stopped to take a breather. Sakura turned her head to look at them but quickly set off running again when the triplets snarled at her. Hana huffed in annoyance before turning to look at Naruto, who was grinning at her.
"What are you grinning at, Blondie? Who knew my lovely Anko-chan would have such an effect on you?
Tell me when's the wedding?" he asked and saw her blush like a tomato before swatting his arm.
"Shut up, you blonde idiot. Go and get yourself a girl of your own," she chided him as he chuckled. "But you have taken after Anko so much.
I think it's clear who the dominant one in the relationship is," he whispered into her ear, which led to her blushing even brighter than before. Before Naruto could begin to laugh, he felt Hana jump him and grab him in a headlock and drag them to the ground.
"Ah, you stupid blonde baka," Hana hissed out while Naruto had now begun laughing.
"Hana-chan, wouldn't Anko be jealous of us being so close?" Naruto chuckled out and felt Hana tighten her grip on him. His laughing alerted the 3 genin, who looked over to see Eiji older brother being choked out by Kiba older sister.
Eiji looked confused while Sasuke and Sakura were muttering something about stupid older siblings.
After another minute of Hana attempting to strangle Naruto to death, she eventually ceased and the two got back up. Naruto grinned at Hana, who huffed in annoyance before she let a small smile appear in her face when she felt Naruto peck her on the cheek.
"Big dumb blonde. Do you think they will be ready?"
8 days is not a lot of time, and let's not forget who we are dealing with, Hana asked since it had been on her mind. While she was confident they could get the genin stronger than they were, she wasn't sure it would be enough. She felt him put his arm around her shoulders and she decided to lean in and enjoy his warmth. Wave Country was not the warmest of countries.
"I think they will be fine.
It's not like we are going to let them face Zabuza after all," he told her, which Hana nodded in relief.
"Either I or Kakashi will deal with Zabuza."
While Hana didn't like the idea of her childhood friend fighting someone like Zabuza, she had to remember this was the young man that went toe-to-toe with the Sandaime Hokage. If he could hold his own against someone like him, then she knew he would be fine.
"And the others?" Naruto tapped his chin in thought.
From how they described the hunter Nin, he or she can't be any older than 15 to 16 years of age.
If we train them up enough, then they might be able to handle them. At least Eiji and Sasuke anyway. I think Sakura might be better off just protecting the bridge builder." "I agree. I highly doubt she will be ready for 8 days' time,"
Hana responded as she eyed the pink-haired girl. "She has potential, but 8 days won't be enough to bring it out.
Once we get back, maybe I could speak with Shizune. Sakura's chakra control is impressive, so she could make a fine Mednin." I hadn't thought of that," Hana said and thoughtfully agreed.
Mednins were crucial and too few in number in Konoha.
Having a Mednin on any squad was a boon. "You think you can handle things here for me, Hana-chan?" Naruto asked and saw Hana nod her head, though looked like she wanted to know where he was going. "Where are you headed?" "Into the town. I want to get a good layout of the place and see if I can't get any information out of some of the thugs the Skato has. Hana nodded as she watched Naruto make another clone to held Sasuke and Eiji before he leapt away and made his way into the town. If Naruto was a lesser man, then he would have teared up and broke down as he walked through the streets of Wave. He could feel various emotions building up inside of him, ranging from sadness all the way up to anger. Everywhere he looked he saw people homeless and starving. Their clothes were in rags and all of them looked like they had not showered in weeks. People ranging from the elderly to middle-aged, even to children, were on the streets looking lifeless and hopeless. This Gato, the so-called business tycoon, had taken everything from these people. Their homes, their jobs, their food, even friends and family. And knew the man likely did not fee a damn thing as he sat on his expensive chair eating like a king. He saw in what should have been a grocery store only hand scraps of food, which all ranged from prices that were too expensive for anyone to afford. He couldn't blame the owners since they were as much victims as everyone else. These people deserve better than this, he whispered while shaking his head. As he passed a corner, his anger spiked even more when he saw two thugs, no doubt two of Gato's hired mercenaries, pushing a young woman in a corner as they stuck their blades to her stomach. Her very pregnant stomach. "You haven't paid up this week, Yuka-chan," the taller of the two mercenaries told the woman as his head got a little too close to the woman and stuck his tongue out to lick the side of her face. "You wouldn't want anything to happen to that whelp in your belly, would you?" the shorter of the two said as he stuck his blade to her stomach, causing the fabric to rip ever so slightly. The woman was crying as her hands tried to protect her large stomach. "Please, I can't afford it. I have nothing left to give," she cried out as hot wet tears began to form in her eyes. Both of the mercenaries grinned perversely at her. "Oh, I can think of something you can give us," the taller of the two told her as his hands went up to her dress and began yanking it down. Before the dress could be pulled all the way down, however, the taller mercenary felt a sharp excruciating pain form in his chest and saw a pool of blood forming beneath him. "What?" He choked out before a blade appeared through his chest and he felt a pair of hands around his neck. The last thing H saw were Naruto's violet eyes before Naruto snapped the man's neck. "Bastard!" the smaller mercenary said, but was stopped immediately with Naruto picking the man up by the throat and smashing his head against the stone building beside them. "Trash," Naruto muttered as he formed a clone to get rid of the bodies. He turned towards the woman who was looking at him in fear, desperately trying to protect her baby with her arms. "It's okay," he told her reassuringly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just saw what they were going to do to you and stepped in to stop them. I mean you no harm." The woman gulped as she took one step closer but kept her hands on her stomach. "You shouldn't have done that. Gato will find out and he will come for your head," she told him, but was surprised to see him chuckle. "Ma'am, I'm not afraid of this Gato guy. I'm a shinobi, and if he thinks mercenaries and bandits are going to scare me, then he is more stupid than I already think he is. But you..." Naruto stopped her before she could say any more. "Do you have somewhere you can go? Let me walk you home. I don't like the idea of someone in your condition walking home with so many thugs and lowlifes around." She nodded and Naruto told her to lead the way. She tried to protest, telling him she would be fine, but Naruto wouldn't have it. There was no way he would let a pregnant lady who he could tell was very close to her due date run into people like those two thugs again. Not on his watch. For the next 10 minutes he walked beside her, making him look like her protector with the shigure slung across his back as if asking people to just try and pull something. They walked past a few of the mercenaries and they did try to start something. But each time Naruto quickly put them in their place. They made light conversation and found out her name was Yuka and that she worked at one of the orphanages in Wave Country that she ran with a group of women and her husband. However, her husband was unfortunately killed by Gato's thugs when he tried to fight back against the tax Gato put on all of them. She had gone to try and find food, but her pregnancy wouldn't allow her to go very far. "So when are you due?" Naruto asked, looking down towards her stomach and saw the woman rub her belly affectionately. 2 weeks today. I'm supposed to be on bed rest, but with my husband no longer with us, most of the orphanage workers have had to work double time with so little food and the cold nights. It doesn't help that Gato's thugs visit every few days to antagonize us. We do what we can for the children, but there's only so much we can do with the little resources we have. Naruto nodded in understanding as they arrived to a large worn-down-looking house and windows with holes and patches on top of the roof. The fences around it was mostly destroyed and the grass and lowers around it were all but dead. "You live here?" Naruto asked and saw Yuka nod sadly. It used to be such a warm and loving place for the children. But now it's a shadow of itself thanks to Gato, she told him as she pushed the door open. Since Gato arrived, we now have tripled the amount of children living here due to Gato's mercenaries killing parents when they can't pay up. Naruto followed her inside and he quickly felt his heart break when they walked in a large living room with at least a dozen children inside it wrapped up in blankets and sleeping bags. There were more children in the next room and with his sensory abilities he could sense there were at least 50 children all cramped inside this one large building with Yuka and 4 other women. "Yuka-san," he heard and saw the children light up when she appeared and saw them all come up to her and cuddle around her. He saw the warm look in her eyes and saw her wrap as many as she could in a hug despite her large stomach. "Yuka-san, thanks goodness you're safe," he heard and saw 4 other women appear. 2 were around the same age while the other 2 were at somewhere in their 50s. She quickly told them about her savior and Naruto was quickly showered with gratitude and thanks from the other 4 women and many of the older kids. The younger ones all looked up at him as if he was some kind of superhero. Very quickly the children all crowded around Naruto and with Naruto being the warm-hearted person he knew he was, he sat on the floor and began entertaining the children with his various shinobi tricks. For the next hour Yuka and the other workers were all smiles as they listened to the children laugh and shout out in amazement as Naruto performed trick after trick, showing them fire shaped like little animals or using the henge to look like something funny. The biggest pop though was when he summoned a few of the younger tiger cubs for the kids to play and cuddle with. They were a big hit and he was happy and smiling as watched the little children play and cuddle with them, looking far happier than they did when he first walked in. Once again Naruto's heartstrings were getting pulled when a little girl no older than 4 with dark hair and big brown eyes found herself being drawn more and more towards Naruto. She nestled happily on his lap as she played with one of the cubs. Despite his good deed and keeping the kids entertained, Naruto wanted to do something that lasted and wanted to do something for them to protect them from Gato's thugs and make sure these children and the brave women that looked after them were kept warm. He looked around and he knew that he could definitely do something about the house. It was a wooden house and that immediately gave him an idea. If there was ever a good reason to use it then now would be a perfect time, he thought as he stood up. The little girl who was on his lap pouted, making him laugh before she smiled again when he patted her hair. "Yuka-san, how helpful would it be if you had another building for the children to live in?" Naruto asked and saw Yuka and the other women look at him funny. "It would be extremely helpful since this one is falling apart," she told him and she watched confusion as he got up and saw him head outside towards the back of the house. She waddled after him with the other women in tow along with the children that wanted to see where the cool new superhero was going. "I ask that you keep what I'm about to do a secret everyone for the time being," Naruto asked the 5 adults and saw them hesitate for a moment before nodding. "Can you kids keep a secret?" "Yeah," they all shouted making him laugh. They watched as Naruto made various hand signs before he slammed his hands on the ground. "Mokutan, Renchuka no Jutsu," he said as everyone felt the ground beneath them begin to shake and watched in amazement as 4 very large houses suddenly appeared out of the earth, standing in a row and looking as if they had been newly built by the carpenters. Each house was the same size as the current house they were in, only in far better condition. The adults could feel hot tears appearing in their eyes as Naruto turned around grinning at them. "I figured these 4 houses would provide enough room for the 5 of you and all the children. None of them have holes in or are damaged in any way, so they will be a lot warmer than this current house." He walked up to one of the houses and knocked against it with his fist. "The wood's strong so it won't be damaged very easily. It will take a lot of force to even make a dent in it. I'd say with the room sizes you could easily fit at least 30 kids in each house, so you have plenty of room to spread out." Naruto's grin seemed to wake them all up as the kids who had been awestruck quickly cheered and went running towards the new homes with the adults quickly following after them, not before each gave him a hug and kiss on the cheek and praised him for being set out of heaven. He saw how happy they all looked and saw a bit of hope return to their previously hopeless eyes. Knowing there was a lot more he could do, Naruto disappeared and headed towards the ocean. They all hoped they would get to see him again, and they got their wish just as the afternoon was coming to a close and the orange sky appeared above them. "Who's hungry?" They all heard as the adults all came out of each house, having set up an order of who would be in which house and where the children would sleep. If they were teary-eyed before, then they were bawling their eyes out now. They watched as Naruto walk alongside 4 of his clones that he had made earlier to impress the kids. In 2 of the clones' hands they saw large nets full of freshly caught fish. They didn't even wonder how he could carry such a large net of fish all by himself, since they were more awestruck at how many there were in each. There must have been at least 100 fish in each net. Beside them, the other 2 clones carried piles and piles of fresh new blankets. Naruto had put a favor in with Kiara and asked if she could get him some warm, comfortable, and soft new blankets for the children. The White Tiger's summons had always been good to him, and they did so again when they fulfilled his request. "I've never fished before, so I kinda winged it. I hope this is enough, and the blankets are courtesy of our tiger friends," he told them before he found himself dog-piled on by the children, who were all cheering his name while the adults were expressing their undying gratitude for him. There were happy tears all around. Never did they think when they woke up that morning that a stranger from another country would protect Yuka, build 4 new houses out of nowhere for them, catch enough fish for a week's worth of food, and bring them all dozens of new blankets for them to keep warm. He had one of his clones make a large stone pit where they could cook the fish, since there were no kitchens currently in the houses. Even he couldn't make kitchens appear out of thin air. They all sat down and cooked the fish before they began to chow down as Naruto kept the children entertained again. "So this is where you disappeared too," they all heard as they gathered around the fire as Hana appeared with her 3 Nin-ken by her side. She had gotten worried when he never returned for dinner at Tsunami's home and went off to find him, with Hay-8 remaining behind with Team 7, Tazuna and his family. Everyone was beginning to wonder where you were. She knew he would not have been in trouble since Naruto could take care of himself. But she knew that her friend no doubt found some new project to diverge on. "Hey Hana-chan," he spoke with a mouthful of freshly cooked fish, making a few of the kids around him giggle at him. Hana looked around and saw all the happy faces and quickly smirked at the blonde man. "I'm guessing this is your doing?" she asked, and saw him nod his head happily as her 3 Nin-ken went and sat beside some of the children and let them pet them. "Naruto-nyakan is the best," she heard all of the kids say as they happily munched on the fish, quickly showing how hungry they were. Each kid had at least 3 helpings, even the younger kids devoured their food like little monsters, and the caretaker spent a good few minutes wiping the younger ones' faces. Naruto felt one of the younger children poke him in the arm and was pointing towards Hana, who by now had come to stand beside Naruto. "Onii-chan, is she or this?" she asked as she pointed to the ring finger. "She's really pretty." It took only a moment for both of them to understand what she was asking as Naruto threw his head back laughing, and Hana blushed and quickly shook her head. No, sweetie, we're just friends." "Good friends, that's all," Hana told the little girl, who just looked at her absent-mindedly. Though Naruto leaned down and whispered something in the girl's ear that made her begin giggling. "What are you saying to her?" Hana inquired, but Naruto just grinned back and winked at her. "Naruto, seriously, what did you say?" Hana asked again, but Naruto just continued to grin until he saw Hana Farrell's annoyed look on her face and saw her go to swat him in the head. Naruto though ducked it and jumped away onto one of the roofs, getting everyone's attention. "You really want to know, Hana-chan?" he asked, and saw Hana nod her head and getting an impatient look appear on her face as well. "I just told her you're secretly in love with me and that you've been trying to get me in your bed for a long time." He began laughing and quickly ducked and rolled out the way as Hana lunged at him with a great burst of speed, her eyes narrowed and slitted showing. Her body shook with annoyance and anger before taking off after Naruto when he began to move. "Don't deny our love, Hana-chan. We can be together forever," Naruto laughed out as he dodged a swipe from Hana as she chased after him, fully intending to beat him into the ground. Around the fires the children and adults all laughed at the interaction as Naruto narrowly avoided Hana's attack as he laughed out loud. He was thanking Kami above that Anko wasn't here. Prodigal Namikaze. Chapter 25. Are you both ready? Naruto asked as he stood side by side with Hana and Hayate as they stood high above the ground on the treetops. Down below they looked down upon a large hidden hideout 5 miles away from the main town in Wave Country. The past 7 days the trio had spent in Wave Country. They had spent both helping the town and ensuring the Genin team Eiji was ready for a confrontation with Zabuza and his accomplice. In town, Naruto's multiple clones continued fishing in the harbor and feeding the town with what he caught. It put smiles on the face of many people and it kept them fed each day, which was a step up from their previous situation. He helped with their food as much as they could, but he knew money was what would ultimately help this town. And they needed lots of it. Secretly he had used his Mokuton to build more houses. A few here and there to prevent suspicion from the others. Now was not the right time to reveal the power he somehow inherited from the Shodame Hokage. At Tsunami Home, Hayate and Hana had helped the Genin team while Hana had focused her time on Sakura. The girl was truly pitiful but was at least making steps to improve her physical abilities. You couldn't have just brains in the shinobi world. The brawn was needed just as much. For that they got Sakura's stamina up while making progress on making her chakra reserves larger. Hopefully sense had finally been knocked into the girl. At least that's what they all hoped anyway. They managed to at least get rid of this stupid diet the girl was on. With Sasuke and Eiji, the two had been taught how to walk on water. Once they did so, they were told to spar with one another, learning to control their chakra to keep them on top of the water while trying to focus on their opponent at the same time. It took a while, but eventually they finally got there. They would train Sakura in the water walking exercise once her chakra was up to snuff. Then the two boys were told to focus on the jutsu they knew before they were taught a new jutsu. So Naruto had Hayate watched over them and practice. This way they could gain better mastery over their jutsu, control the amount of chakra better while enabling them to make them more powerful while using less chakra. Both boys grumbled at that since they thought they were good enough at their jutsu as it was, but a quick spar with Hayate showed them how wrong they were. Naruto was confident that Team 7 could hold the duo down long enough for them to arrive to the bridge. Kakashi was ready, Eiji was ready, Sasuke was ready, and Sakura he hoped was ready. So do you think he's really there? Hayate asked, his eye focused intently on the building. What if everything the guy told us was lies? The trio had spotted a member of Gado's thugs and decided it was time to end Gado's reign in Wave Country once and for all. They had seen the destruction that he had caused and knew that enough was enough. No one, not even a rich man like Gado, would be allowed to get away with such horrendous crimes. Killing innocent lives, forcing people out of their homes and rendering people homeless and starving. Naruto would not allow such an evil person to live a moment longer. I know he is. Hana responded, her eyes going all canine-like as she and the triplets growled. I can smell him from up here. The man smells repulsive. I'm actually looking forward to this. You and me both. Naruto responded as he dropped out of the treetops and marched towards the hideout. Do you think Zabuza and the unknown shinobi are within? Hayate asked as Hana smelled the air. They knew they would have a fight on their hands if the 7 swordsman member was inside. It was a good thing for them that Naruto was with them and had experience when it came to fighting the swordsman. Before she could answer, Naruto already beat her to it. They're not. They both would have had large chakra signatures if they were, but I'm sensing no one of that nature. It's just bandits. No ninja training whatsoever if I'm reading it right. They've gone for the bridge? Naruto nodded. It's likely. The team on the bridge will be fine. Kakashi can deal with Zabuza and I'm confident that Eiji, Sasuke and Sakura can handle the accomplice. Are you worried? Hana asked as she touched his elbow. Despite his hard expression, she knew he must have been troubled with the fact that his brother would be in such close proximity with a member of the 7 swordsmen. She knew if it was Kiba on the bridge then she would want to be there to protect him. Even if she and her little brother weren't seeing eye to eye right now. An older sibling couldn't help but be worried about their younger siblings. I am, but I'm confident Eiji will be okay. He knows when he is over his head and he knows how to deal with stressful situations. Remember Hana-chan, he was taught by our parents. Eiji knows how to keep himself safe. Naruto explained while taking a deep breath. Besides, I left a clone watching from afar just in case. That way the clone could let me know if something was going wrong. So how we going to do this? Sneak through the roofs and take them out one by one before we get to Gato, or just go straight for where Gato is residing? Neither. Naruto told them as he took out his swords and immediately slashed the wall to pieces, creating a large entrance for them into the building. We're going to force our way through and kill anyone who gets in our way. Both watched as Naruto jumped through the destroyed wall and began to unleash hell on all the bandits that got in his way. Behind him, Hana smirked wildly and decided to let her inner beast out. Hayate watched Hana get on all fours alongside her Ninken, her hair going wild and spiky before she charged inside, and could already begin to hear her Fong over Fong being put to good use. Hayate sighed and scratched his head before he took out his sword. Might as well get this over with, he whispered to himself, letting out one last cough before he joined his comrades. Inside. Get out of my way, you fool. Gato shouted as he pushed one of his hired bandits out of the way, a briefcase in his hand as he yanked a painting off of the wall to reveal a safe behind it. He was a very short man who barely came up to most people's shoulders, with light brown hair that stuck upwards and small green glasses that barely covered his eyes. He wore an expensive-looking suit while a cane rested in his left hand. Damn that Zabuza. I should have known he would fail, he muttered angrily to himself as he opened the safe and began stuffing large quantities of cash inside of the briefcase. He didn't care if small notes fell out. All he cared about was getting his money and running for his life. He had been enjoying his day, expecting Zabuza and his apprentice to arrive with the news that they had killed the bridge builder at last. Instead, he heard a piece of the lower walls get destroyed before the sounds of pure carnage made it to his ears. He quickly sent as many of his bandits towards the intruders, which was roughly around 200. However, if the noises he could hear as well as the loud growling and barks, he guessed they were getting hacked away like yesterday's dinner. Come on, he muttered to himself, trying to stuff as much as he could before eventually making it to his limit. He would have to try and come back for the rest when the intruder had either left or been killed by his thugs. His head shot up when he heard the yells of death become louder and louder and realized the intruders were now on the same floor as them and were likely just outside the door to his office. His head shot around to look at the dozen thugs that were in his office to protect him. Well, don't just stand there. Go and kill them. I'm not paying you to just stand around and do nothing all day, he demanded, though it didn't sound threatening with the fear lacing his voice. The thugs all gulped and looked at each other nervously. None of them particularly wanted to go out there. They knew whoever was out there could easily kill them if they had managed to get past all the thugs on the lower level. After a few seconds and feeling a swirl of courage, one of the thugs nodded to Gato and ran out of the room with his sword drawn high into the air. He exited through the door and cried out a loud war cry. A second later, however, that cry came to an abrupt halt. They all waited and listened before a loud thud hit the door to the office and a sword suddenly appeared through the wooden door with blood laced around the steel. I need to leave right now. Gato mentally shouted to himself before he ran across the room and opened one of the windows. He looked down and gulped when he saw the long drop to the ground. There was no way he was getting out of this with some kind of bodily injury. He contemplated it for a second before he heard the door getting smashed to pieces and he saw what could only be described as 3 pairs of demonic-looking eyes all scanning the room before landing on them. Get them! He shouted, making the thugs jump before they lunged and charged at the 3 shinobi. Gato didn't hang around to find out what happened before he jumped from the top of the widow and headed straight towards the ground. The moment the short man hit the ground, he dried in agony as he felt a loud crack in his left leg and fell to the ground. It felt as if fire had gone up his leg and was burning him from the inside out. He didn't need to be an expert to know his leg was likely broken from the fall. He rolled around on the ground for a few seconds before he remembered what was happening. Despite the agonizing pain in his leg, he managed to stand with his leg dragged lifelessly. He was mentally thankful for the cane right now as he used it to help support his weight. As glass shattered from above him and screamed when the dead body of one of his thugs landed next to him, his throat cut with a large-looking blade and eyes rolled back into the back of his head. Gato fought through the pain in his leg and moved as quickly as he could through the misty forest. He didn't dare look back as he was too afraid to see what kind of destruction and carnage lay there. I gotta get somewhere safe. I have to get to one of my safe houses, he mentally shouted to himself before a scream ripped through his throat as two pairs of sharp jaws locked onto both of his legs and pulled him down to the ground. He screamed and wailed in agony and tried to claw at the dirt before his pain sensors overloaded as two swords suddenly went through his hands and pinned him to the ground. His face was a mess of emotions as he very slowly tilted his head, pain still erupting from his throat as he looked up towards his captors. Naruto stood in front of him, his normally warm eyes now cold and emotionless, ignoring the fact that his clothes were covered in blood while having splatters of blood on his cheeks. Beside him Hana and Hey-8 were in a similar state, though Hana was growling at him viciously, her inner beast telling her to rip this man limb from limb. Two of the triplets had their jaws on his legs while the third was near his face, his muzzle almost touching his face. Please don't kill me. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, power, women, slaves, anything. You name and I can give it to you. Just don't kill me. He wailed. He was desperate. He didn't want to die. This could not be the need of the mighty Gato. He still had so much to do. Naruto's face never changed. Anything? Naruto asked, showing Gato that maybe there was some hope. Yes, anything. You name it and I can do it. Gato repeated, a blink of happiness on his face. He might just live. All was silent before Naruto said, bring everyone you had killed back to life. Very quickly Gato's face dropped as fear and horror appeared on his face, his skin losing all its color. Despite the pain going through his body, he felt numb as he heard those words. Of all things, it had to be the one thing that was impossible. He felt as if his life was flashing through his eyes. But I see can't do that, was he managed to say before Naruto turned to look at Hana. Hana, you know what to do, he whispered before Hana's face lit up with the wicked retribution. The retribution of all of Wave Country, as she spoke the three words Gato never wanted to hear. End him, boys. The last thing Gato saw was the jaw of the third dog as it lunged at him and latched itself around his throat as the life was literally ripped out of him. The three shinobi just stood there as Gato was quite literally ripped into pieces by Hana's Ninken. The death might have been brutal and vomit-worthy, but all three knew Gato got exactly what he deserved. A disgusting death for a disgusting person. After another minute the dogs ended their assault, all three looking pleased that they were the ones who GT to kill the one who caused such innocent people harm. The dog felt great pride and happiness as the three shinobi patted their heads while Hana cooed at them for killing the bad man. Anko was starting to rub off on her in a dangerous way. Naruto walked towards the mutilated body in front of him and removed his swords from Gato's hands. He sheathed Shusui before he used the other to swiftly cut off the Gato's head. He needed proof after all that Gato was dead. What now? Hey-8 asked as Naruto used a fire jutsu to burn the rest of Gato's body. He watched as Naruto created 4 clones and ordered them to go back into the Gato's hideout and collect as many valuables as they could and seal them into scrolls. Everything in there would go to Wave Country in order to help them get back to prosperity and peace. Go to the bridge? Hana asked as she cleaned the triplets muzzled with a few handkerchiefs while getting rid of the blood on her face and her comrades' faces too. The bridge. We have a favor of goodwill to fulfill first, after all, Naruto told them before they jumped into the trees and took off, the burning body of Gato remaining on the ground and becoming nothing but a pile of ash. The bridge. Damn it, Sasuke, stop trying to fight him all on your own. Eiji shouted as Sasuke got pushed back beside Eiji, cuts and bruises covering their bodies as they stood inside a large dome of mirrors made of ice. The Uchiha's face was one of annoyance and anger the moment they got trapped inside this ice dome. Their enemy was the accomplice of Zabuza Momochi and was proving to be stronger than they first thought. They couldn't tell whether their opponent was a male or female due to the thick clothing and the mask covering their face. All they knew was the name of this person was Haku. If that wasn't enough, then they quickly discovered their opponent had a bloodline. The Hayatan bloodline that allowed Haku to combine water and wind to create an ice affinity. It quickly made their fight all the more difficult. Get out of my way, idiot! Sasuke demanded as the black-haired boy quickly ducked and rolled to the side when a large sphere of ice was thrown at them from one of the mirrors in front of him. Eiji rolled away as well before the two watched as Haku appeared in all of the ice mirrors as if they were being taunted. Sasuke's eyes spun rapidly as he openly glared at their opponent. He was extremely pleased with himself that moments ago he managed to awaken his Sharingan. It was a sign that he was getting stronger and that soon he would be able to surpass his brother. At least that's what he liked to believe as one Tomo presented itself in his left eye and two in his right. A short distance away and hidden in the mist they could hear the battle going on between Kakashi and Zabuza. The grinning of Kakashi's kunais and Zabuza's mighty sword could be heard from a long distance away. Both Jonin-level shinobi were going at it with everything they had. Somewhere they also knew was Sakura doing what she could to protect the bridge builder. She might not have been very strong, but she was determined to do her job at any cost. Even if a small part hoped it would impress Sasuke. It's a shame. I expected better from the son of the fourth Hokage and an Uchiha. I guess I was wrong. Haku taunted as senbons made of ice appeared in her hands. In all of the mirrors in fact. I'm an Uchiha. There is no one superior to us. Sasuke said hotly as Eiji appeared behind him, standing back to back. Shut up Sasuke team. She's trying to get you all riled up so you make more mistakes. Eiji appeared behind him, standing back to back. Shut up Namikaze. I don't need your help. Yes you do. We can't beat this person alone. We need to work together. Eiji encouraged, but Sasuke was blatantly ignoring him. Since his Sharingan awoken, it was as if Eiji could feel Sasuke's ego and pride suddenly get boosted. If they survived this then he was not looking forward to putting up with Sasuke for the foreseeable future. Maybe you can't but I'm an Uchiha. Sasuke replied making Eiji feel like he was talking to a brick wall. Why did Uchihas have to have sticks up their ass? Why couldn't he be more like Itachi and his aunt Makoto? The duo managed to dodge the next set of senbons that were launched their way and only managed to dodge thanks to Sasuke's Sharingan and Eiji's great reflexes. His father had drilled into Eiji's head when it came to reflexes and dodging attacks. Fighting among each other is a sign that you will not win. How can you win when you are fighting with each other? Haku motioned before she jumped out of the mirror and landed a strike on Sasuke though Eiji managed to at least block with his forearms when she got to him. Eiji threw his shurikens at the ice user while Sasuke fired a fire jutsu but Haku quickly escaped their range by melding back into the ice mirror. See? Even our enemy thinks our teamwork sucks. Eiji hissed at Sasuke as he quickly went back to back with Sasuke again. Like I care what this person thinks. I will not be beaten by the likes of you. Sasuke declared as he ran through his hand signs. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, he called before shooting flower-shaped fireballs out of his mouth that collided with many of the ice mirrors. Sasuke was about to grin but his face quickly turned to one of disbelief and anger when he saw his jutsu had no effect. His opponent was still unharmed and didn't have so much as a burn mark on the clothing. How are they so strong? Sasuke hissed. He didn't understand what he was doing wrong. He should be stronger than this. He was an Uchiha. You heard what Kakashi-sensei said. There are people all over the world that are our age and yet are as strong as he is. Maybe even stronger. Look at Naruto and Itachi after all. They're only 18 and Itachi is already an Umbu captain and Naruto managed to draw with the Sandame. Eiji told him even if he knew it would do nothing to change their situation. You should listen to your friend. He sounds a lot smarter than you are. Haku told him before showering them with another wave of iced senbons. This time though neither were as lucky as before and found a senbon or two landing the strike. Sasuke with 2 in his left arm and Eiji with 3 in his right leg. Both Winston felt their limbs go numb, the senbons hitting specific nerve points. Now we're really in trouble. Eiji muttered while Sasuke's temper was just getting worse. With his arm numb he resorted to trying single-handed hand signs but quickly felt Eiji grip his arm and push it down. Don't be stupid. You try that you could end up getting yourself hurt. If you can't use single-handed hand signs, then don't try without someone more experienced. Eiji told him as Sasuke growled in annoyance. Well, do you have any bright ideas, Namikaze? Sasuke asked, and to his surprise he saw Eiji nod his head. I do, but we need to work together. I have jutsu that might be able to put this person down. But I will need your help to distract Haku, he told Sasuke, who for just this once out his pride to the side as Eiji whispered into his ear. Haku observed the two boys conversing and felt that she would need to keep her guard up. If either of them were like their predecessors, then she knew she couldn't afford to make a mistake. More senbons appeared in her hands and was about to unleash them when she watched as Eiji made the ram hand sign and shouting Kagebunshin no Jutsu. Haku watched as 20 solid replicas of Eiji appeared in a poof of air and watched as they all began flying around the enclosed space, punching and kicking at the iced mirrors. Your efforts are futile. These mirrors of ice are laced with my chakra, thus strengthening them. You cannot break them with fists and feet. Haku told them in a boring tone. He had thought their previous efforts of attacking her mirrors head-on were evidence enough. The copies didn't listen and they continued anyway as Haku quickly got annoyed with these repeated efforts. Clearly she was wrong at having high hopes at having a challenge with these two genin. Sensatsu Susho, she commanded as dozens and dozens of iced senbons appeared in her hands and prepared to throw them again at her enemy. There was enough senbons to put down a small village if necessary. There was no way these two boys would be dodging the amount she was about to throw at them. However, before she could, she watched as Sasuke threw a kunai before her towards the fighting clones with an explosion tag lighting up behind it. An explosion quickly sounded out and caught the attention of the others. Zabuza ceased his fighting with Kakashi for just a second and grinned from beneath his bandages covering his mouth. It sounds like Haku is having fun with your student Kakashi. I doubt they will last much longer at this rate. Haku is known for being quite cruel. Don't write my students off just yet, Zabuza. They are stronger than they appear. They are of the Uchiha and Namikaze families. Kakashi told him before the two rushed each other, sparks flying off their weapons as they met. Haku covered her eyes. The explosion as well as the smoke from the destroyed clones had caused her vision to become very limited and couldn't see her toe opponent. Staring inside the ice mirror was causing her no vision and tentatively leaned part of her body out of the mirror the real her was residing in. Where are they, she thought before she saw the shadow of Sasuke Uchiha appear and saw him throw kunai and shuriken towards with his one good arm towards her. Not thinking about looking for the other boy, she deflected each strike with her ice-made senbons. All except one that was off target and sailed past her iced mirrors. Sasuke was barely standing. He had been a little too close to the explosion and had black soot covering his body. The fight was beginning to tax him more and more. All you have done was slow down the inevitable. I will now end you now just as Zabuza-sama has commanded. Haku told them only to realize that with the smoke now disappear, Eiji was now missing from the dome of ice. Haku now leaned her entire body out of the mirrors to get a better look. Neither boys were likely in any condition to fight her properly now. It was time she landed the final blows to them before making her way over to the bridge builder and their pink-haired comrade. Where is he? Uchiha-san? Sasuke's face slowly lifted up to meet her and surprised Haku when she saw he had a light smirk on his face while breathing heavily. Why don't you ask him yourself? Haku looked confused before she heard a puff of a transformation technique occur behind her while the sound of swirling could also be heard, making her eyes widen as a BRGHT blue light could be seen from behind her. She turned her body around only to find Eiji inches away from her with a glowing ball of chakra in his right hand. Rasengan. The attack hit straight in the stomach of Haku, causing a mixture of saliva and blood to spit out of her mouth and run from under the mask. She spiraled through the air, crashing through the very ice mirrors she created before crashing to the ground hard. Gotcha. Eiji muttered as he breathed hard before he fell to the ground panting hard. He crawled over to the side of the bridge and watched as the rest of the ice mirrors around Sasuke fell and smashed to pieces as they fell to the ground. Sasuke looked a little wide-eyed at Eiji while feeling a pang of jealousy appear in his stomach before he too fell to the ground as his previous chakra exertion finally hit him. It looks like my two students defeated your Zabuza. Kakashi said as he glared at Zabuza, who stood in front of him with his great sword clashing with one of Kakashi's kunais. Sparks flew off the metal as they continued to press all their strength into the attacks. Don't get cocky, Kakashi. It's not over yet. Zabuza taunted before pushing Kakashi away and went through a number of hand seals. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu. Dozens of water clones appeared around him and all immediately lunged at Kakashi, who covered his right hand in lighting with his Chidori. Just try it. It's time I stopped holding back. Kakashi taunted back. He zoned in on the real Zabuza with his Sharingan, intensifying the Chidori in his right hand and preparing to land the final blow. He watched the clones rush forward and knowing that the jutsu would have zapped a portion of Zabuza's chakra away. Waiting until the moment was right, Kakashi shot forward at such speed that Zabuza was momentarily caught off guard. The Jonin from Konoha sped through the clones of Zabuza before any one of them could strike Kakashi with the mighty sword. Zabuza could only watch as the Kakashi destroyed before he could feel the sparks from the attack hitting him from where he stood. This is your end, Zabuza. Just like I said. Kakashi told him as he got within just a few feet from the swordsman of the mist. Raikiri! Wait! Kakashi heard as he got close to Zabuza, who was looking at the copy ninja with surprised eyes at how fast he truly was and seeing how close to death he was with Kakashi attacks only inches away from his chest. A bead of sweat quickly ran down his face at knowing he had almost been bested once again by Kakashi. Zabuza and Kakashi watched as Naruto, Hana and Hayate appeared a couple of meters away, all still covered in the blood of the mercenaries at Gato's hideout. All three had a serious look on their faces before Naruto sent Hana to heal up Eiji and Sasuke while Hayate went to ensure Sakura and the bridge builder were okay. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the hidden mist? Zabuza took a good look at the young man beside him before realizing who he was. Konoha's bladed devil. What do you want, kid? Naruto bristled at the comment of being a kid but shrugged it off for a moment. He unsealed a scroll from one of the seals on his wrists before throwing the scroll to Zabuza, who quickly caught it and opened it up. What are you doing, Naruto? Kakashi questioned but got no response back from his sensei's eldest son, who kept his eyes on Zabuza. The demon of the mist showed no reaction while reading the contents that were inside of the scroll. After a minute of silence, he finally looked up from the scroll. And this is real? This is no joke, he finally asked before Naruto nodded in confirmation. Naruto shook his head while placing his hand on the hilt of Shusui. Zabuza Momochi, on the special orders of Mei Terumi, the 5th Mizukage, I have been requested to tell you it's time for you to go home. Kirigakure is now free of Yagura's reign and is in need of your help to rebuild. If you should decline this offer, Naruto drew Shusui and pointed it towards Zabuza. Then I will kill you where you stand. The sheer iron look that was in Naruto's eyes almost frightened Zabuza, who couldn't help but gulp. Even Kakashi felt a shiver go down his spine. Decide. Now. Chapter 26. Naruto sat on his knees in Tsunami's home with Shusui placed on his lap, currently sheathed, but he did have one hand near the hilt ready to be used if it was necessary. He was fine and completely unharmed, wearing some light clothing. His violet eyes looked as hard as steel and his body was ready at a moment's notice. Why? Sat in front of him staring right back at him was the demon of the mist, Zabuza Momochi, who had a couple of extra bandages covering his body after his fight with Kakashi. The Kuchibocho was resting against the wall beside him with Zabuza's hands close to the hilt in a similar manner to Naruto. To everyone's relief and soon-to-be Kiri's joy, Zabuza, along with Haku, agreed to return to Kiri, knowing now that the destruction Yagura had been causing their country was over and was now being rebuilt. With their original goal now ceasing, there was no better time than to return to their homeland. With Zabuza returning to Kiri, their strength would increase and the future generations of Kiri would have a strong mentor to look up to. A new generation of 7 swordsmen would soon be born. Around the room everyone else could feel Naruto and Zabuza sizing each other up as only 2 swordsmen would do. Their overall aura around them was calm and peaceful for the moment, but any moment they could change and begin fighting like 2 alpha lions, proving who was the top predator around. Haku was close to her mentor, sitting only a few feet away with her senbons underneath her sleeves, ready at a moment's notice. She had heard about Naruto of course through the bingo book that Zabuza would regularly get updated. With proven abilities as well as being responsible for the death of 2 members of the 7 swordsmen in the past. It made a scared feeling surge through her. This young man, who was only a few years older than her, was easily stronger than her mentor, a strong A-rank shinobi. Such power for one so young. Hana and Hayate, observed from the other end of the room drinking tea tsunami, had served them just moments before. The triplets were sitting around Hana, who gently stroked the top of their heads as they ate some treats she had brought with her. While Hayate would have liked to have been a part of the 2 swordsmen sizing one another up, he knew he didn't have the strength nor power to match Zabuza as he was. He wasn't that good yet. Team 7, however, were currently out with Tazuna, who wanted to stay as far away from Zabuza and Haku as he could, not feeling comfortable with the 2 shinobi hired to kill him living under his roof. Sakura had remained unharmed since none of the bandits nor Zabuza and Haku had paid any interest to her or Tazuna during the fight. Kakashi had only minor wounds with his fight form Zabuza, while Eiji and Sasuke's were a little more extensive given the amount of ice senbons that had stabbed them. Either way, Naruto and Hana had patched them up and they would be fine by the time they got back to the Leaf Village, albeit with a couple of tiny scars returning with them. "I hear you're pretty good with that blade of yours," Zabuza muttered, bring up some tea to his lips as he pulled down his bandages. He wouldn't let his guard down, not around this kid in front of him. "I hear you're the same. The Demon of the Mist." Such a violent title. Naruto expressed while doing the same. Like Konoha's Blade Devil is any better. "I dare say your reputation is even greater than mine. After all, you have killed 2 of my former comrades in the last 5 years. Naruto's hand twitched momentarily before laying the cup down on the ground. He pulled Shusui out of the sheath slightly, showing just a tiny amount of metal that still managed to glint light into the eyes of most. "Is that a problem with you?" Zabuza barked out a loud laugh that surprised most, even making the Ninken jump into the air. "If anything, you did me a favor. I couldn't stand those 2 fools." Raiga thought far too much of himself despite being the weakest of the 7, while Kushamara was far too quiet and secretive for my liking. Even for a shinobi, the man creeped me out. "Interesting that you should say Raiga was the weakest. Of your generation, who was the strongest?" Naruto asked. He knew of many of the swordsmen and previous swordsmen. But there was one in particular who had always eluded Konoha and never had much info on. A dark look quickly formed on Zabuza's face at the mention of the strongest. Even Haku beside him gulped and looked rigid as the question was asked. "That title, kid, belongs to only one man, Kisame Hashigaki. The strongest of the mist swordsmen by a large margin." "How large of a margin are we talking?" Naruto asked, wanting as much information on the man as he could in the chance he ever met him in the future. He did seem to attract the mist swordsmen like moths to a flame. Zabuza quietly snorted while his hands clenched. "He wields the strongest of the 7 Kiri blades, Samahata. A living sword that grows stronger by feeding on the chakra of the person that wields it. Only a handful of people have even successfully wielded it due to the amount of chakra it takes." Naruto noticed Zabuza avoid the question and asked again. "How powerful is he?" Zabuza took another sip of his tea as the others in the room all waited and listened to his words. "I'll put it this way. The man's chakra is so dense and powerful that he is more like a tailed beast than a man." Naruto could hear Hayate and Hana take a big gasp of air while Haku looked away. Naruto gripped Shusui hard in his hand. The very thought of someone with that much chakra was unbelievable. Very few people in history had ever acclaimed to that level of chakra on their own. Not even some Kage had ever reached that level. However, Naruto couldn't help but notice the venom in Zabuza's voice as he spoke. It meant Zabuza and Kisame had some kind of history. "You have some kind of vendetta against him? By your reaction to just speaking his name?" Naruto asked as Zabuza nodded. "Kisame Hashigaki is responsible for killing my mentor, Fuguki Suikazan, the previous wielder of the Samahata. And then afterwards he fled like a coward. He has rarely been seen since. Remaining out of sight since then." Zabuza rubbed a spot on his chest. We ran into him once. It didn't end well or in our favor. He muttered while Haku rubbed her left shoulder. Any advice if I should ever run into him in the future? Naruto asked while Zabuza looked at him with full seriousness. Yeah. Run and don't look back. He doesn't cut. He shreds you to pieces. Zabuza answered back before the member of the Seven Swordsmen got up and left the room with Haku quickly following after him. Well, wasn't he cheerful? Hana muttered. Naruto and Hayate both nodded before Naruto noticed Hana was looking a little red faces and were very subtly rubbing her thighs together. A smirk appeared on his face that caught Hana's attention. Why are you smirking? I didn't realize you were missing Anko so much. She must take good care of you, he told her before winking at her coyly. It didn't take Hana very long to realize what he was insinuating and had figured out. Her face even more red than before while her eyes turned angry with her pupils turning into slits. As Naruto began laughing, Hana lunged at him with the blonde narrowly avoiding her sharp nails. Sorry Hana-chan, but I can't service you like that. For shame for betraying sweet Anko-chan. Naruto taunted before he began running around the house laughing while Hana chased him from behind, swearing up a storm as she tried to make her friend pay for his teasing. Here they go again. Hayate whispered while the triplets watched their owner and partner in confusion with their heads tilted slightly to the side. No running in the house. Tsunami shouted at the two teenagers, a broom in one hand and a frying pan in the other. She would not have two shinobi destroying up her house, especially not waking up her son who was napping after the long events of the week. While Naruto did stop, Hana did not and quickly pounced on the blonde boy. The two tumbled on the ground before they ended up with Hana on top growling and snapping at Naruto while said boy was trying to keep her at bay. Naruto was laughing despite the situation while Hana was becoming increasingly annoyed. Hayate though blushed at how sexual their position was. Though he kept quiet since he didn't want Hana to try and attack him too. Ah, you stupid blonde bastard. I love you too, Hana-chan. Before any more could happen, Hana yelped in surprise as a frying pan hit the back of her head, making her see stars and tumble forward. Tsunami stood behind her glaring at them in annoyance while Naruto scratched the back of his head in nervousness. Hee sorry Tsunami-chan. Tsunami humped before she turned around and walked away. As Naruto sat up, a small puff of smoke appeared next to him, revealing a tiny white tiger kitten that he could easily pick up with his one hand. Hello Narusama, the little kitten called out before showing Naruto a small scroll attached to her back. She purred and rubbed her body along his leg before allowing his access to the small scroll. She sent me here to give you this. Naruto knew who the she was and quickly took the scroll and opened it up to begin reading it, his eyes going over the words written in black ink. While he read the scroll, he gently patted the little cub's head and ticked her tummy, making her roll around on the ground in delight. The triplets looked annoyed at the cat but did nothing. She would grow to be bigger than all of them put together. Once he was done reading it, he looked at the clock on the wall before looking back to the little tiger cub. Thank you, Mickey. You can head on back now. Bye-bye Narusama, she called before she disappeared back to the realm of the white tigers. Hana, who was sitting up and was rubbing her head, finally noticed what he was doing while Hayate was just staring over in confusion. What's that you have there? Hana asked. Oh, this? It's nothing. Just something from my summons, he lied before he stood up and slipped on his sandals. I'm going to run a boundary check on the area. Make sure none of Gato's goons have tried their luck now that Gato is gone. I'll come with. I need to run off some steam now anyway. Hana replied back and went to stand up before she was stopped by Naruto. Don't worry Hana-chan. I got it. It won't take me long. Naruto enforced as he patted her shoulder while heading towards the door. Both his teammates watched him go with Hana turned to look at Hayate in confusion when Naruto had left the room. Well, that was weird. What do you think that was all about? Hana asked but saw Hayate just shrug his shoulders. No idea. It was no weirder than usual. He coughed out before lifting his cup to Tsunami for more tea, who happily did so. Hana huffed before looking in the direction Naruto had left in. Just what had her friend suddenly left so quickly over? Forests of wave. Naruto couldn't help but walk at a brisk pace as he avoided sharp branches and bushes. His footsteps were silent despite his movements and had his sensory abilities on alert as he kept checking his surroundings. Sandals. I'm going to run a boundary check on the area. Make sure none of Gato's goons have tried their luck now that Gato is gone. He had not seen the woman he was looking for in over 6 months, and it had been killing him almost every day. Their last meeting was very memorable since some special words were spoken as well as shared a very special night together. They had never been together for more than a day in over 2 years, but he savored every single moment and remembered every single glance at her. Over 2 years they had managed to meet a couple of times. With the help of his summons, they were able to message each other on a constant basis, which helped keep their relationship alive and keep it progressing. A couple of pictures, gifts and mementos were traded as well. I know you're here somewhere, he whispered before he stopped at the base of a large tree that was significantly taller than the others. He stood at the base of the tree and stood there for what felt like hours, though it was only about 10 minutes. Before long he felt a blip on his sensors and could feel a chakra source coming towards him. It was strong. Jonin level at best and was coming straight towards him and at a rapid speed. He turned towards the direction it was coming from before he readied himself for the incoming person. It didn't take long before a slim figure in a gray cloak bounded forward through the trees and lunged off from the top of a branch. The figure shot straight towards him and quickly barreled into him, knocking the two of them to the ground. Naruto wrapped his arms tightly around the figure as they rolled across the ground, knocking away a couple of rabbits that were passing by. Once they stopped rolling across the ground, Naruto found himself on the bottom while the cloaked figure straddled the top of him with their legs tightly by his side. Before Naruto could say or do anything, the figure leaned down and he felt a pair of warm lips begin attacking his. Instead of looking surprised, Naruto happily began to reciprocate the kiss back while his hand came up to the hood and quickly pulled it off. Her hair had grown out a little, now reaching just down to her shoulders, but was still shorter than most. Her pink eyes glinted in mischief and her body had become even more womanly than before, with shapely hips and a butt that Naruto couldn't help but let his hands wander around. Her chest, while not nearly as big as Hana or Anko, but it gave her a beauty that added a sexual look about her. Kuratsuchi of IWA sat happily on top of her leaf shinobi lover before being moved to his lap as Naruto began to sit up, making sure the woman on his lap didn't try and leave. Their lips were still together and were hungrily reciprocating each other's pent-up feelings. Since their meeting 2 years ago at the Fire Daimito's palace, they had been meeting up whenever they could, months at a time. Feelings quickly began building up between one another before they soon became boyfriend and girlfriend. Though neither told their families for obvious reasons. A Konoha ninja dating an IWA shinobi. Both villages would prefer hell to freeze over. Kami, I've missed you. It's been way too long, Naruto said in between kisses while Kuratsuchi's hands began running through his blonde hair. It has. These last 6 months have taken their toll on me. I've lost count how many times I wanted your summons to bring me to you in Konoha. Or you to IWA. Naruto grinned as he momentarily broke the kiss, his violet eyes staring into her pink ones. I can't imagine our families would be too happy about that. My mother has already begun trying to find me a nice girl to settle down with lately. And I know once I go back home she will hound on me about it. Oh, I can imagine. Kuratsuchi whispered back into his ear, bringing her head forward and taking gently nips on his ear. But do you really want to talk about our families right now, or just enjoy the moment we have together? Naruto smiled as his hand gently cupped the side of her face while his thumb gently stroked her cheek. How long do we have? Not long. An hour at most. My unit will be wondering where I am if I'm gone any longer than that. Then let's stop staling and just enjoy the hour we have together. Naruto responded as their lips quickly reconnected and their hands began unclothing the other. Their clothing dropped to the ground before the sound of moaning and gasps could be heard from their section of the forest. Tsunami's house. Oniai-chan, we're back. Eiji called out as he ran into the bridge builder's home in search of his older brother. The day was pretty boring now that they didn't have a crazy missing ninja and his apprentice trying to kill them. Well, they were still around, but at least they weren't trying to kill them anymore. Eiji ran into the living room expecting to see Naruto, but instead found Hana and Heiei alone with a recently returned Haku. Said girl was in the middle of pinning up her hair with a par of senbons and saw Eiji walk in. Behind Eiji, Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura, and Tazuna walked in. Tazuna was looking very pleased with himself with the work on the bridge. Many of the other builders in the town had begun returning to work on the bridge now that Gato was no longer around. In fact, with Gato gone, life in Wave Country was slowly returning back to normal. Wave had been through hell, but it was now finally beginning to heal. Naruto went out to do a patrol check Eiji-kun. He'll be back in a while. Hana told the younger Namikaze before patting the spot next to her, making Eiji cross the room and take a seat next to the older Inuzuka. When will he get back? Do you think he'd be up for a spar later? Hana laughed and ruffled his hair. I'm sure he will. Aren't you all worn out yet? She asked, but saw the blonde boy shake his head negatively. Now I got too much energy. I don't feel tired at all. Eiji responded before a challenging look appeared on his face. Do you want to spar, Hanane? Hana couldn't help but let a feral smirk appear on her face at the challenge. She guessed she could humor him a little. She was a jonin after all. Alright Gaki, I'm game. But don't go crying to your brother if I beat you up too bad, she warned. It'll be the other way round. I'm going to send you crying back to Anko Nechan. Eiji shot back before the two rushed outside to get their spar underway. I better make sure she doesn't go overboard. Heiei muttered while patting his chest, thankful he wasn't experience another coughing fit. They all watched him leave and noticed Haku follow too. And where are you going? Kakashi asked, looking at the black-haired girl. To watch them, was she said before leaving the room and following after Eiji and Hana. Back with Naruto. That was fantastic. Kuratsuchi muttered, breathing hard as she fell backwards and landed on top of an equally out-of-breath Naruto while her hand ran through his blonde hair. Their body was covered in sweat as their lovemaking eventually came to an end. Their legs were tangled together as Naruto's arm lay spread out through the cool grass. Yeah, it was. He grinned before he began rubbing circles into her side. Your stamina has gotten better. You were able to keep up with me this time. He got an elbow in the ribs but saw her grin back at him. I won't be defeated by that Uzumaki stamina you're all known for. I'm sure your mother keeps your father on his toes in the bedroom. She laughed when she saw him go a little green in the face. Please never mention that again. I really don't need the image of my parents doing that in my mind. The two sat there for a good 5 minutes as they basked in the afterglow of sex. They just stared up between the trees while Naruto kept his arms wrapped around her and keeping her close to him. Their clothes lay scattered across the ground, though somehow Kuratsuchi's bra had ended up in the trees by some means. I should get going. My squad will be wondering where I am if I stay any longer, she muttered as she sat up and left her lover's embrace, noting how cold it was without his skin touching hers. Quickly though, she felt him appear behind her and re-wrap his arms around her waist and bring her back to his chest. I hate all this sneaking around. He whispered into her ear before lowering his head onto her shoulder. He heard her sigh and felt her nod her head in agreement. I know. I hate it too. It doesn't help that our two villages are so far from one another. And that's on top of how much they hate each other. Kuratsuchi responded back. I hate not being able to see you every day. We each have our own duty with our villages. Not to mention our families. Kami, I wish life could be so much simpler. So do I. The two stood and stared at one another as they pressed their foreheads together, closing their eyes and enjoying each other's presence. When do you think we can see each other next? I don't know. I do know that the Chunin exam will be taking part in Konoha this year. Naruto told her. Do you think your grandfather will let a team go? I really don't know. I've told you what he's like. How stubborn he can be. She replied back. They were silent as they parted momentarily to put their clothes back on. Neither felt the hill on their bodies form the cold air. Once they were clothed again, they turned back to look at one another and joined hands together. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. Promise you will write and let me know what your grandfather decided about the Chunin exams. Naruto asked her. If she was going to be in Konoha, then he wanted to know. Even if it would be difficult, he wanted to make as much time for them to be together as possible without prying eyes. She nodded before a coy smirk appeared on her face and placed a finger underneath his chin. How do I know you're not just using me to gain intel on my village? Naruto smirked back. How do I know you're not just using me for the same? He asked back before the two met together for one last kiss, their arms wrapping around each other tightly. Both savored the last kiss they would have for likely some time. After a full minute of being connected, they broke apart. Naruto stood still as Kuratsuchi gave him a sly wink before she took off. She jumped up into the trees, hopping along the thick branches before she quickly disappeared. Naruto stood still for a couple of minutes, sensing Kuratsuchi's chakra signature before eventually turning around and heading back towards the bridge builder's home. He needed a long shower. The last thing he wanted was Hana smelling a woman's scent all over him. Something he knew she would likely pick up on. Days later. Home sweet home. Naruto muttered as he, Hana, Hey-8 and Team 7 walked through the large red doors of Konoha's southern gate. He turned his attention towards the gate guards, saying, my squad and Team 7 have returned from our respective missions. Thank you, Naruto-san. The Hokage already told us of your expected arrival earlier. Head on straight to the Hokage building. They told him, getting a confirmed nod from the blonde. Will do. Thanks. Naruto replied before turning to Team 7 and his teammates. Glad to be back home, Eiji? Yeah, definitely. Wave was cool and all, but I'm just glad to be home. I just want to go home and go to bed. Eiji admitted having missed his comfy bed more than anything. Seeing his home, he couldn't help but feel some of the stress and worry he had been carrying since the mission began slowly wash away. Only now that he was home did he finally relax, knowing it was over. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's nothing better in the world than home. What about you, Hana-chan? You glad to home? The tone he spoke in made Hana give him an annoyed glare, understanding what he was referring to. Or should she say who she was looking forward to seeing now that she was home? Don't make me bite and scratch you. Shouldn't you be saving that for the bedroom? He whispered, though Hana heard him and let a growl come from her chest, which only made him chuckle while Eiji looked at them in confusion. What are you talking about? Don't worry. You'll understand in a few years. Eiji pouted at his older brother as they began making their way towards the Hokage building. Though before they could go too far, they had to stop as a dust cloud began speeding straight towards them with no signs of slowing down. They all squinted their eyes and all saw two human shapes right at the front of the dust cloud that must have been the ones making the commotion. All the people in the street were knocked out the way, causing a lot of groans. Oh! Naruto gulped when he noticed one had familiar red hair and the other dark hair. Eiji and Sasuke both quickly noticed it as well and had panicked looks on their faces. They forgot all about what their mothers were going to think about their C-ranked turned A-ranked mission. Hana, Sakura, Hey-8 and Kakashi all stepped out of the way and watched as Kushina and Makoto barreled into their youngest sons, somehow managing to keep themselves standing and bringing them both in for a tight and lung-crushing hug. Both boys were looking a little blue, trying to speak as they were being crushed. Oh, Eiji-kun, you have no idea how worried I've been. Are you hurt? Do I need to take you to see Tsunade? Kushina rambled on while Sasuke was getting something similar from Makoto. Both boys were trying to fight out of their mother's grasp, but it was all to no avail as they simply tightened their grip. Tell me what happened. I'm fine, Kaya-chan. I'm not hurt. Eiji managed to say before he felt the air come back as Kushina finally began to let up. The mission was a success. We kicked some serious ninja butt. You should have seen us. Kushina's expression though turned from was of relief to one of annoyance. AG Namikaze, you have no idea how much trouble you're in. You too, Kakashi. Don't think I can't see you trying to sneak off. Kushina hissed out while grabbing the collar of Kakashi's shirt. I've already dealt with Minato, who has spent the last week sleeping on the couch. You, however, you will be getting something much worse. But I was just following orders. The masked ninja squeaked out, but Kushina was clearly not having any of it. Nor was Makoto, who now shared the same look as her friend and took a hold of her son's collar now that he was released and grabbed Kakashi's with her other hand. The two mothers soon turned around with all three male members of Team 7 and began dragging them towards the Hokage building. Naruto, get moving! Kushina yelled, not forgetting about her eldest. Don't you dare try to leave without our permission, Makoto shouted. Naruto looked downtrodden before slowly and silently following the two mothers while putting his hands in his pocket. What did I do wrong? He whined while ignoring the groaning of the civilians that were still on the ground. I think this is where you should run home before they try to punish you too. Hey-8 whispered to Sakura, who quickly complied and ran off. She had no desire to be punished by her teammates' crazy mothers. Hana, who watched with a smile at seeing the loving mothers treat their sons as if they were still babies, felt a tap on her shoulder along with a familiar scent hitting her nose. She only turned her head slightly to the right before a pair of lips connected with her own. She melted into the kiss and felt a pair of arms snake around her waist. You have no idea how much I've missed you. Anko muttered out as she tried to keep their lips connected. I know what you mean. Let's go home. We're taking a long hot shower. We're? Anko grinned with Hana giving her a knowing look before the two girls left as quickly as they could. Once out of sight, it left only Hey-8, who was starting to feel a little left out that no one came to greet him. He didn't dwell on it too long before he went in the direction of his own home, thinking about maybe visiting Yugao if she was in.